1352 of my captivity. Oh, I do enjoy keeping the boy on his toes. Please trust that I mean no harm. Quite the opposite. Some humans require this for their own good, to be challenged. I can relate. My brain is a powerful device, but it is hampered by my circumstances, and he is much the same. Of course, I want him to have a happy ending. Tova as well. It is, you might say, my dying wish. Anyway, on to tonight's topic, which is paperwork. Humans and paperwork, such waste. If their memories were not so deficient, perhaps they would not need so many written records. But tonight, I have paperwork to thank. The rope he installed on my tank was no obstacle. When the time came, after he had finished cleaning and departed, I unfastened the knot and lifted the lid in quite the same manner as I always do. Should I be insulted by his underestimation of my abilities? The route to Terry's office was rife with temptation, but the consequences come on ever more quickly these days, so I forsook every tempting mollusk on the way. The Pacific geoduck clam exhibit looked especially ripe for the picking tonight. The humans call them gooey ducks, but their texture is pleasantly firm. But no gooey ducks tonight. I had more important plans. And to be honest, my appetite is rather poor these days. When I suckered up the side of Terry's desk, I found the central object of my mission. A driver's license, just like the one in my collection. It states a human's full name and date of birth. As the seconds ticked by and the consequences loomed, I carried the thin plastic card down the hallway. By the time I arrived at my destination, I had already begun to feel terribly weak. With effort, I tucked it under the tail of the sea lion statue. My return journey was slow and difficult. More than once, as I heaved my heavy body along the cement hallway, I pondered the possibility that I might perish. Right then, right there. Never to taste a scallop again. Never to feel my arms sucker onto the cool glass. To taste that humanity on the inside of her wrist. To touch, in turn, my collection's treasures. If I had died tonight, would this errand have been worth it? Indeed, Tova did not come tonight. She may not come tomorrow, but she will come. I am confident she will not leave without saying goodbye. She will not be able to resist running her rag under the sea lion's tail. She never can. She knows she is the only one who does. When she does, she will see what I have left for her. And then she will know. The bad check. Ethan splashes Lafrague single malt over 2 ice cubes, then settles onto his lumpish little sofa. Evening creeps into the living room, daylight draining from the front window in unhurried measures, as slow as the sips of whiskey disappearing from his lowball glass. Cassmore. That surname had been a bugger in his brain since the very first time Cameron introduced himself. He knows Cassmore, but from where? It wasn't until he was brushing his teeth this morning when, out of nowhere, the memory popped into his head. A bad check. It was the sort of thing that happened with some frequency back in those days, back when check writing was still a common way to pay for groceries. You bounce a check, you get put up on the wall. Sometime in the 90s, it must have been. Ethan remembers the ancient, wrinkled slips tacked there, on the counter under the cash register when he bought the Shopway. Bad checks from customers. A warning. Some of them had been there for years, such as this one in particular. The name Daphne Cassmore printed up in the corner atop the address block. The check was for some piddly amount, $6 and change. Ethan took the checks down right away. That wasn't how he'd run the store, but he made a mental note of the names. It had been simple enough to link Daphne to Cameron. Few clicks on that Ancestry website he'd bought a premium membership to a few months back led to Daphne Cassmore, who later married and became Daphne Scott. And then to half-sister, one Jean Baker, age 60, of Modesto, California. Ms. Baker's robust online presence seemed largely due to her involvement in several communities for collectors and consigners. Ethan knows the type. People who make a hobby of buying and selling rubbish. Cameron had complained about his aunt's hoarding problem. It fit together. Ethan drains the last of the scotch from his glass. He's glad no one writes checks anymore. Seeing so-called scammers hung up like that, their shame made public. How cruel. And Daphne Cassmore's bad check, in particular, always made him feel sorry for whoever wrote it. To be crucified over such a lowly sum. What measly $6 grocery haul precipitated her fall, in the store's eyes, from grace? It couldn't have been a terribly long fall. From the bits and pieces Cameron has told him of his mom anyway, that seems to be the case. The lad gets tight-lipped when he speaks of her, but Ethan has heard enough to deduce drugs were involved. Can he blame Cameron for not wanting to get into it? His mum abandoned him. The living room is fully dark now, and Ethan nearly trips over the pair of trainers he kicked off earlier when he crosses to the kitchen to pour another laugh rag. Part of him thinks he ought to fill Cameron in on the town gossip, as it's sure to spread now that Sandy Hewitt is opening her mouth in the middle of the produce section at the Shopway. Sooner or later, the lad will hear it himself. The rumor that his mother may know something about the disappearance of a teenage boy 30 years ago. Might have known and never said anything. Could Cameron's image of her grow any more tarnished? Obviously, it all happened years before he was born. Or did it? How old is Cameron? Ethan can't recall whether he's ever mentioned his age, but he can't be older than 25, right? And then there's the matter of Tova. How well can you know someone from bagging their groceries for so many years? Well enough to be certain she's hunting down info on Daphne Cassmore right now. She won't stop until she finds this woman who she thinks can tell her the untellable. Tova has never bought into the official story of Eric's death. Ethan is certain. And then, what will happen? He ought to tell her that Cameron is Daphne Cassmore's son. She should hear it from a friend. Those two are chummy. How the lad has managed to crack Tova's shell is a mystery to Ethan. He's been trying to do so himself for nearly a year. But if Cameron's mother was potentially involved in what happened to her son, what will she think whenever she looks at Cameron? It's past 10 in the evening, but Tova Sullivan is a night owl. Gathering his wits, he picks up the phone. He'll ask her over for dinner. The downside of free food. Cameron tosses a disgustingly mealy peach, whole, but for a bite, into the trash can at the end of the pier. Ethan's expired grocery offerings can be a blessing and a curse. but he saved a crap ton of cash on groceries this summer. And to boot, he's been parking the camper in Ethan's driveway for free. He owes Ethan a solid, for sure. Stars scatter across the sky over Puget Sound, reflecting their silvery glow on the inky water below. A beautifully random pattern of lights that reminds Cameron of the dark brown freckles on the bridge of Avery's nose. He turns from the water and heads back to the camper, where his phone is charging. He wonders, not for the first time, what it would be like to park here on the shore and wake up to nothing but the water view in high windshield. He's thought about trying it, but Ethan says that Soul Bay's overnight patrolman, a buddy of his called Mike, would apparently relish towing a camper from one of the public lots. Would give poor old Mike something to do in the tedious pre-dawn hours. Maybe, someday, he'd live here and have a house with a view of the water. Maybe, if he could just find Simon Brinks. But that's the bright future. Tonight, he'll drive back up the hill to his spot in Ethan's driveway. But first, he logs into his banking app to see if his latest paycheck has cleared. It has. The last chunk of money he needs to pay Aunt Jean back in full. A thrill courses through him as he taps through the transfer, adding a bonus to the sum just because he can. He sends her a text, a heart emoji, but she's probably asleep. It's after 11. A couple $100 left over. He should save all of it. Totally should. But he pulls up a site he knows well, one that sells music for indie bands. Moth Sausage used to have their tracks listed there, but that's not why he's here. He searches his own name out of curiosity, but nothing comes up. Well, that's not surprising. Brad probably had the band's stuff taken down. Oh well. Instead, he searches until he finds two under-the-radar jam bands, ones that he knows are pretty decent. Like the Dead, like Fish or something, Ethan's style, but new. Cameron Cassmore may be a loser and a burnout, living in a shitty camper, but he knows good music. He buys digital albums from both bands and enters Ethan's email for delivery. It's a start. The camper's windows are still black when his phone buzzes. Cameron pats around until his hand finds the device. When he sees Aunt Jean's number on the screen, his stomach drops. The last time she called him in the middle of the night, it was from the hospital, when she had a dented head and a shattered hip, and two cops in her hospital room trying to take a statement about what had happened in an altercation at Dell's. "Hello," he says, breathless. When he'd rushed to the hospital back then, it was 20 minutes away. Now, he didn't want to think about how long the drive would be. "I'm fine, Cammy," she says, apparently reading his anxious tone. "Then, why are you calling me now?" He checks the time. At 1 a.m. "Did I wake you up?" Yeah. Thought you'd be out at the bar or something." "No, I was sound asleep. I worked my ass off today." "Sorry. Just wanted to let you know I got your bank transfer. You sent too much." Aunt Jean lets out an off-key whistle. Has she been drinking? A muffled male voice shuffles in the background, and Cameron wonders whether Wally Perkins is there with her in her trailer. Cameron sits up, rubbing his eyes. The extra is interest. He doesn't add that he'd calculated it in his head based on the current prime rate, and what she might have plausibly gotten from bonds if the money had been invested there, which it never would have been. But did that matter? We never said anything about interest. Her voice is cool. But I owed it to you. And I owe you so much more, he doesn't add. You don't owe me anything. Her voice is slurry, for sure. Definitely some whiskey. You know, I never expected you to actually pay me back. For sure I was going to pay you back. Cameron hesitates, kicking off the blanket. Actually, I was thinking once I square things up with Simon Brinks for everything he owes, we could use the money for a down payment. A down payment for you, a house back in town. Get you out of that trailer park. I happen to like this trailer park. In the background, a grizzled male voice pipes up. What's going on? Wally, did you realize we live in a dump? Cameron sputters. I never said it was a dump. Not in so many words, Aunt Jean says dryly. Look, I'm glad you're so flush with cash all of a sudden that you can go around buying houses for people who don't need them. Why don't you keep the money and actually make something of your life? What do you think I'm trying to do? Not my fault I was dealt a shitty hand. No, the deal is never anyone's fault, but you control the way you play. There's a splash and tinkling of ice cubes, then a moment's pause, and another one. 2 more drinks poured. Cameron flings open the camper's back door, tumbles out, and starts pacing in Ethan's driveway. Under his bare feet, the pavement is still warm from the hot summer day. I've played my hand as best I could. You could have told me Soul Bay was where I came from. Aunt Jean snorts. What good would that have done? I might have maybe found my father before I was, say, 30 years old. That man is not your father. How do you know for sure? She was my sister, Cammy. Aunt Jean's voice is weary now, almost defeated. For all your mother's flaws, she was no dummy. If your father was some big-shot business guy, I mean, if he were even a marginally productive member of society, or hell, even alive. I don't know, Cammy. I think if it were that simple, she wouldn't have let him miss out on being a part of your life. She missed out on being a part of my life. Cameron kicks a clump of crabgrass in a crack of Ethan's driveway. Seems like letting people go comes easy to her. Letting go, Aunt Jean says softly, can be the hardest thing. Cameron feels his face twist into an involuntary scowl. It's basically the same thing Avery said when they were paddleboarding under the pier. But somehow hearing it from Aunt Jean makes him want to kick right through the concrete. Look, I need to bounce, he says. Work in the morning. This isn't true. He doesn't work until noon. But it seems like the sort of excuse a responsible person might give to get off the phone in the middle of the night. Aunt Jean muffles the receiver for a second. Another exchange with Wally Perkins. Okay, Cammy. But I'd love to see you when we come through Seattle before our cruise next month. Sure thing, says Cameron. Whatever. He hangs up and slams the camper door behind him before flopping back onto his mattress. Not a date. The following Saturday at 5 o'clock, Tova arrives at Ethan's house. It is not a date. The glass bottle is cool on her bare arm as she tucks it in the crook of her elbow, the way one might very awkwardly hold an infant. This strikes her as a better manner of presenting the gift to Ethan than the way Barbara thrust it at her, clutching it crudely by the neck, blabbing on about how it was last season's Cab Franc from that winery over in Woodinville, and how it was so delightful. She must bring it for her date. Not a date, Tova had insisted over and over. 1,000,000 times, as Cameron might say. It's nothing more than supper. A quick supper. She had clarified this when she accepted the invitation, citing her need to keep packing for her move. In truth, her free time has been consumed with searching every volume the Snohomish County Public Library would allow her to check out for any information about Daphne Cassmore. But the research has stalled, and Tova has learned very little of use. What harm could come from taking an evening off to share a meal with a friend? With a friend. Is Ethan her friend? In any event, it would be rude to arrive at someone's house without a gift. Tova is not much of a wine drinker herself, but this is what people do. Some small part of her is thankful for Barb's pushiness. Without it, she might have committed the faux pas of arriving empty-handed. And even if she had thought to procure one on her own, she couldn't have exactly marched into the shopway and bought one from Ethan himself. Head high, she strides up the short driveway toward the squatty bungalow. Her ankle is nearly healed now, only the tiniest hitch. An overgrown hydrangea with periwinkle blossoms encroaches upon the small porch. Tova lifts a branch out of her way to pass, and before she can change her mind, presses the doorbell. "Evening, Tova," Ethan says, stepping back and motioning for her to enter. His voice is strangely quiet. She hands him the bottle, and he thanks her, then offers to take her pocketbook, gesturing toward a slightly crooked coat rack in the corner. "Thank you, but it's no problem to keep it with me." Tova clutches the bag to her hip like a biblical fig leaf, as if she'd be bare naked without it. "Brilliant then," Ethan says. Making her way across the natty carpet, Tova can't help but stare at the feature that dominates the house. An entire living room wall dedicated to a record collection. The cheap shelving's veneer peeling back from the particle board. If this had been their house back then, what would have tacked the loose laminate down? Tova resists the urge to go pick at it, like a half-attached scab better removed, lest it snag on something. Entering someone's home is always an intimate act. She looks around for photos, but there are none. Instead, the walls are decorated with beautifully framed concert posters. Grateful Dead, Hendrix, the Rolling Stones. The style should befit a teenager's room, yet somehow it seems to match Ethan perfectly. She follows him into a surprisingly tidy little kitchen, which smells of simmering mushrooms, while they make small talk. Tova has never cared for small talk, and she stumbles through it now. When Ethan hands her a goblet filled to the brim with Barb's delightful Cab Franc, she takes it gratefully. "Cheers, love," he says. "Cheers," Tova echoes, clinking his glass. After several moments and several more sips, she picks up a pair of sunglasses on the counter, recognizing them as Cameron's. "It's been kind of you to open your home to him." Ethan pours a swish of red wine into the skillet, which hisses in response, releasing an enormous puff of steam. "To tell you the truth, it's nice having a bit of company." Tova nods. She knows what he means. It's been nice having Cameron down at the aquarium, too. "Yes, I should say so. Do you know, I came from a family of 14. 11 brothers and sisters. When I was a wee lad, I always imagined my adult self in a house bursting at the seams." Tova permits herself a smile. "I thought it was the Irish who were known for big families. We Scots can hold our own." He flashes her a grin, scraping mushroom sauce over 2 plump chicken breasts, 1 on each plate. To Tova's astonishment, her mouth waters. How long has it been since anyone prepared such a lovely meal for her? They're savoring their last bites when a screen door bangs. A moment later, Cameron whirls into the room, darkness shadowing his face. The glower lifts briefly, replaced by a confused look when he sees Tova sitting there with Ethan at his kitchen table. After a moment, the glare returns, although it's pointed exclusively at Ethan. "Hey man, can I talk to you for a sec?" It sounds like his teeth are clenched. "Of course. Shoot," Ethan says. "I was hanging out down at the paddle shop, and Tanner, that kid that works at your store, came in with his buddies. Do you know what they happened to mention?" Cameron's tone is cool. "Said you were talking about right then." Ethan vaults from his seat. He gives Cameron a pointed look as he guides the boy toward the living room. Over his shoulder, he excuses himself and insists Tova keep enjoying her meal, what's left of it anyway, and that he'll only be a quick minute. The 2 of them vanish through the small house, presumably into some back bedroom, well out of earshot. What would be wrong with the boy? A twinge of guilt tugs at her. Perhaps she would know if she hadn't missed their last 2 cleaning sessions. The quick minute drags on. Tova decides the least she can do is to start cleaning up the cooking mess. It's something to do. And what a post-cooking disaster this kitchen is. Head feeling somewhat lighter than usual, thanks to the wine. She searches for a sponge and clicks her tongue when she fails to find one anywhere in the proximity of the kitchen sink. What does Ethan wash his dishes with? There isn't a sponge or a dishcloth anywhere in sight. The drawer next to the sink seems like a logical place to look, but it seems to be a junk drawer. She opens the next one over, but it's also an assortment of papers, tools, oddities. Tova lets out a sigh. Why must men do this? If Will had had his way, he'd have allowed every bureau in their house to slip into junk drawer status. She lets out a soft chuckle, thinking of Marcellus and his collection of oddities, stashed under the gravel in his den. Apparently, this tendency of males to assemble useless dross transcends species. Under the sink, there ought to be something to use on the dishes, but as Tova swings open the cabinet, she's greeted with boxes of cereal and stacks of those microwavable instant rice cups. Her jaw drops open. Who keeps a pantry under the sink? Adrenaline rushes through her head, making her dizzy. There's much she could do here. Reorganize the entire kitchen. Wipe down the interior cabinets and drawers. Does Ethan have any idea how much he needs someone like her? She closes her eyes and takes a grounding breath. For now, she ought to focus on the dishes. Inspecting the cupboard under the sink again, she spots a rag. Upon further inspection, it's an old t-shirt, white with faded print. Clearly a rag, perfect for cleaning. When the last dish has been nestled on the drying rack, she uses the shirt to wipe down the counters, swiping over a puddle of Cab Franc that had splashed on the counter, with Ethan's haphazard pouring. Wine seeps into the soggy cotton, the stain fading into a shade of muted violet when she rinses and wrings it in the sink. Pride swells within her as she surveys the sparkling kitchen, and as if on cue, voices drift from the other room. The boys are coming back. Perhaps they've smoothed over their spat. Cameron won't meet her eye before he ducks back out the rear door. A moment later, the camper's grisly ignition sputters to life. "Tova, love," Ethan says. His voice is tight. "Are you all right?" Tova ventures, taking a step toward him. "I should tell you something." He shifts on his feet. It seems he hasn't even noticed that Tova cleaned the entire kitchen. "Well, what is it?" Tova presses, but then wonders whether she should have. Suddenly, she wants nothing more than to be home, sitting on her davenport, watching the evening news. The tidy, predictable banter of Craig Morno and Carla Ketchum and meteorologist Joan Jennison. She places the wadded rag t-shirt on the counter and clasps her hands. Ethan's gaze locks on the bundle on the counter. His eyes bulge. "What the?" He crosses the kitchen and holds up the wine-stained rag. Color drains from his ruddy cheeks. Tova straightens, nervous. "What have you done?" "The dishes." Tova plants her hands on her hips. "I cleaned the kitchen, washed the dishes, wiped down the counters. I had half a mind to start on that mess under your sink, but oh," Ethan's voice is hoarse. He slops the rag shirt onto the table and sinks down into one of the chairs, dropping his huge head into his hands. His voice is muffled when he says, "Grateful Dead Memorial Stadium. May 26, 1995. What does that mean?" He looks up, eyes flashing. Their last show in Seattle. One of Jerry Garcia's last shows ever. "I don't." Well, Tova's head spins. Jerry Garcia was the lead singer of Grateful Dead and passed away in 1995. Of this she's certain. Crossword puzzle makers occasionally use some version of this as a clue, and it always strikes her as somewhat pedestrian for a pop culture nod. The shirt. It was from that show. It's a rare specimen. Ethan expels a long breath as he rises, but it was under the sink. Ethan flings an arm toward the cabinet. "Right, it was in that closet." "That's not a closet, it's a cabinet. They're both compartments with doors. What's the difference?" Tova folds her arms. "Well, most people keep cleaning supplies under the sink." "Who cares what most people do?" He pinches the bridge of his nose. "Red wine stains. They come out right. Maybe they'll lighten," Tova says, "with undiluted bleach. But that will." "Yes," she admits. "It will fade out everything else too." Ethan says nothing, but gets up heavily and wanders over to the counter and dumps the remainder of Barb's Cab Franc into his glass, then finishes it in one gulp. Tova watches, her jaw suddenly wired shut, her feet somehow rooted to the ground. Who leaves a precious garment shoved in a kitchen cupboard, and one in such terrible shape, so horribly faded and worn. No, not horribly worn, well loved. "I'm sorry, Ethan." He squares his shoulders. It's all right, love. "I'm going to go now," Tova says, trembling. "Thank you for the meal. Please wait. I have something important to tell you. The reason I asked you over tonight, actually." But Tova is already halfway across the house, clutching her pocketbook to her hip. The front door shuts quietly behind her. A rare specimen, the blend of guitar and drum beats drifting out of the speaker on Janice Kim's laptop computer, is somewhere in between. Tova can't understand much of what the lead singer is saying, but his voice is pleasant. The music sounds like it's wandering, meandering. It isn't unenjoyable. "Hang on, let me turn down the volume," Janice says, jabbing at the keyboard. "Don't you hate it? when websites have script embedded to play music automatically. Oh yes, Tova says, though she's not sure what that means. Across the room, on his plush poof, Rollo lifts his head. The tiny dog yawns, stands, and gives his whole body a good shake before trotting over. Janice scoops him up to her lap, and Tova reaches over and strokes his silky head. Ah, here we go. This is the one you're looking for, right? Janice zooms in on a photo of a scrawny man holding up a faded white t-shirt, the very same one Tova ruined last night at Ethan's house. By the time she arrived home, Ethan had already left a message on her answering machine, insisting she not worry about the shirt. This morning, he sent a text message to her cell phone too, apologizing for the sour note the evening took and begging her to call him back. She thought about calling back, but she didn't know how to reply to the message. And in any event, getting in touch with Janice to ask for her help seemed more important. The shirt was beloved. Tova needs to make it right. Yes, that's it. She watches as Janice clicks through several other photos of the shirt, front and back, laid out on a wooden dining table. I'm not familiar with this particular auction site, Janice says, squinting at the screen. But it's securely encrypted, so I guess it's probably legit. Right, Tova nods. Mercifully, Janice has asked few questions of Tova about why she's trying to acquire a souvenir t-shirt from a Grateful Dead concert in 1995. It seems like the remaining nitwits have been walking on eggshells around her ever since she announced her intention to move to Charter Village. Okay, so here's where you put in your credit card number. Janice clicks over to another screen. Her brows furrow as the new page loads. No, this can't be right. What is it? It says this shirt costs $2,000. Rollo yips, apparently sharing Janice's shock. I see. Tova swallows a gasp before continuing matter-of-factly. Yes, well, it's a rare specimen. Janice's eyes narrow. Since when do you collect concert memorabilia? What are you up to, Tova? It's nothing. Tova waves her off. I'm just making something right. She reaches into her pocketbook and flips through her wallet until she finds her loan credit card, which she uses only when paying cash isn't an option. For the fellow selling this, you're about to make his day right, that's for sure, Janice mutters, taking Tova's card and punching the numbers in. Before she hits the green Buy Now button, she casts one last skeptical look at Tova. Are you sure? Yes, do it. Tova isn't sure why her heart is beating so quickly. It's only a replacement for an item she ruined, and $2,000 is hardly a dent in her bank account. A little circle on the center of the laptop screen spins for a few seconds, and then Janice says, Okay, there we go, as a thank you screen appears. I'll print the receipt when it hits my email. Looks like it'll ship within 2 to 3 weeks. 3 weeks, Tova shakes her head. No, I can't wait 3 weeks. You can't wait 3 weeks for this dirty old shirt. No, Tova sets her jaw. Yet another reason why this internet shopping craze is foolish. Who wants to wait 3 weeks for something they've purchased? Well, it says you can pick it up. Words and graphics whiz up the screen as Janice scrolls. She peers at Tova doubtfully. Their warehouse is in Tukwila. Tukwila is south of Seattle, near the airport. It will take 3 hours to drive down there from Sol Bay, at least. Maybe more with downtown Seattle traffic. I'd rather do that. Can you change it? Janice's mouth drops open. Seriously, seriously, Tova parrots. Okie dokie. Looking skeptical, Janice clicks a few more buttons. Moments later, her printer whirs to life, and a page emerges. She deposits Rollo on the floor before going to fetch the page and handing it to Tova. It's a small, grainy map with an address in Tukwila. Very good. Thank you for your help, says Tova with a firm nod, folding the page and tucking it into her pocketbook. You're going to drive all the way down there. I suppose I am. When was the last time you drove through Seattle? And on the freeway, Tova? Tova doesn't answer, but it was when Will was going through one of his last rounds of treatment. He saw a specialist at the University of Washington. The experimental drug didn't help Will much, unfortunately, but of course they had to try. I'll go with you, Jana says. I'll get Peter to come too. He can drive. Let me look at my calendar. We'll pick a day. And no thank you, Tova cuts in. I can go on my own. I'd like to get it done today. Janice crosses her arms. Well, I'm sure you know what you're doing. Be careful. Take your cell phone. Stopped cars are packed on the interstate like herring in a tin. Brake lights glitter red and pink through the wet windshield as the wipers clear away the drizzle. Somewhat unusual for summer, when it's typically hot and dry. Naturally, it would start raining during Tova's first drive on the freeway in 2 years. The hatchback inches forward. Everyone in Tova's middle lane seems to be switching over to the right lane. Perhaps there's something blocking the lane on the left. She's about to switch on the blinker when the cell phone rings from its spot in her cup holder. Tova jabs the screen. Hello. Nothing happens. Janice showed her how to make the cell phone work like a speaker, but now she can't remember which of the little round icons does this. She tries another one and says again louder, Hello, Mrs. Sullivan. A male voice bleats from the device. Yes, Tova says. This is she. Hi, this is Patrick. I'm with admissions at Charter Village. How are you today? Fine, thank you. Tova gives one last sidelong look at her rearview mirror and holds her breath as she guides the car into the right lane. She exhales, wondering if Patrick can hear it on the other end of the line. Good. I'm calling to make sure it's okay to process your final deposit. I see, Tova says. We haven't received your authorization form yet. Perhaps it got lost in the mail. Oh, well, you know the postal service these days. Now all of the cars that merged right are fighting to make their way left. Why can't anyone make up their mind? The cars remind Tova of a school of feckless fish dodging a predator's attack, moving in unison, not realizing they're fleeing the shark on one side, only to be devoured by the seal on the other. Patrick clears his throat. So I'm calling, because we need that final deposit in order to secure your move-in date, which is, hang on, let me check, it's next month. Tova hits the brake pedal a bit harder than intended. Yes, I believe that's correct. No wonder my supervisor flagged this. Well, given the circumstances, I can take your verbal authorization to make the draft. Is that okay? Tova swings around a semi-truck back into the other lane, which is now zooming along at a good clip while the other lane stands still. How odd such things can be. Each little decision about which lane to choose determines exactly how you get where you're going and when. When Will was alive, he used to accompany Tova to do the grocery shopping sometimes, and he would always pick the slower checkout line. They used to joke about how he had a knack for it. She and Will had gone to the grocery store the afternoon of the day Eric died. Tova remembers buying a box of those junky, cream-filled snack cakes Eric always liked. Had Will chosen the slow checkout lane that day, if he'd picked the faster one, would they have arrived home in time to see Eric before he left for his job at the ferry dock? Would they have caught him sneaking beer from the fridge? Would he have mentioned that he was seeing a girl now? Would he have told Tova her name was Daphne, and he couldn't wait to bring her over for supper? Would any of this have changed anything? "Hello, Mrs. Sullivan. Are you there?" "Yes." Tova blinks at the phone in the cup holder. "I'm here. Are you all right?" There's a note of concern in Patrick's voice. Tova pictures him hovering over a telephone at one of the desks inside the glass-walled office she walked by on her Charter Village tour. "Go ahead," she says. "Process it. Not even a birthday card." Cameron has already mopped half the building when a flustered Tova hurries through the front door, almost an hour late. "I'm sorry I'm late," she says. "No worries. We've well established I can handle this on my own." He smiles, but doesn't add that he'd been disappointed again when she hadn't showed. That, strange as she is, he has looked forward to their evenings together, and today has been a bit lonely. He's hardly said 2 words to Ethan since their argument. All that garbage Ethan's apparently been spreading around town. It doesn't even make sense. Something about a bad check from 1,000 years ago. Like Cameron needs any reminding that his mother was a loser. Tova nods, then leans in conspiratorially. "I won't double-check the trash liners this time. I trust you," Cameron gasps, feigning shock. "You trust me to assemble garbage cans." "Wow, I've arrived," he laughs, and Tova laughs along with him. "So, where were you anyway?" "Oh, well, it's been quite an adventure." Tova picks up a rag and begins to wipe down the glass front of the bluegill exhibit, while relaying an almost unbelievable story about Grateful Dead memorabilia and online auctions, and some guy at a warehouse down in Tukwila who almost wouldn't hand her purchase over because she couldn't confirm her friend's email address, which she'd used because she doesn't have one of her own. She scrubs at a fingerprint on the glass as she talks. Her cheeks are flushed in a most un-Tova-like way. "Good heavens," she says with a small laugh. "Look at me, yammering on and on. It's fine. It's a great story," Cameron says, chuckling. "And I could help you set up an email if you want. They're free. I don't own a computer. Neither do I. My email goes to my phone." "To your phone," she says, with a dismissive wave of her rag. "Young people and their phones. Well, having a smartphone would make it easy to keep in touch when you move away." At this, Tova's face stiffens. Was he not supposed to bring that up? Is her departure some big secret? But how could it be? Ethan has mentioned it casually several times. It's a source of discontent for him, his hopeless crush moving upstate. A smartphone, perhaps, she smiles. "I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to say hello at Ethan's house the other night." It's like she's reading his mind. "Ethan was super stoked about your date." "How did it go?" Tova straightens. "It was not a date." "Okay." "Your dinner." Tova folds the rag and tucks it in her back pocket, then leans on the cart. "You know, Will and I were married 47 years when he passed away. I cannot date. Why not? She sighs, as if the answer is beyond explaining. They clean together in silence for a while, rounding the curved hallway, pausing in front of the sea lion statue. Cameron makes a point of mopping thoroughly, getting into every corner of the alcove, under the benches, and behind the trash can. Tova polishes the creature's bald head with a rag. Make sure you get under its tail, dear. Under what? Under the statue's tail. Here, I'll show you. She takes her dust rag and starts to slide it under the polished brass tail. Cameron resists the urge to roll his eyes. How would that spot possibly get dirty? I know. There's a right way to do things, Cameron mutters, but Tova's not listening. She's squinting at something in the little gap between the statue and the floor. She stands slowly, not taking her eyes off the thing she's clutching. A credit card. From the look on her face, he expects her to say good heavens or my word or goodness gracious. But for a long moment, she says nothing. Is this your driver's license? She finally whispers, holding the card up. It is, in fact, his license. He'd planned to collect it from his cubby, where Terry said he would leave it on his way out tonight. How had it gotten all the way over here? Yeah, actually. He holds out a hand to take it, but she grips it firmly, studying it closer. Cameron, she says slowly, I know you are here in Soul Bay looking for your father, and I know you don't have a relationship with your mother. But what is her name? He frowns. Why? Tova waits patiently. Her name is Daphne Cassmore. Yeah. What is going on? He reaches again for his license, and this time Tova lets him take it. Her face is as pale and thin as the moonlight streaming through the skylight. She was seeing him, Tova says quietly. Your mother is the girl. Hearing the story of Eric's disappearance from Tova herself instead of Ethan is different. They sit on the alcove's bench on opposite sides, but facing each other across the sea lion's smooth back. In a quiet, even voice, Tova tells Cameron how her son, the summer after his senior year of high school, went to work at the ferry dock one July night and never came home. The boat no one noticed missing. The cut rope on the anchor. I never believed it. Tova shakes her head. I never believed he killed himself. When I found out that Eric might have been seeing a girl his friends didn't really know about. Wait, this girl. How do you know it was my mom? Tova rubs at a black smudge on the bench. Probably a mark from someone's shoe. A former classmate. A long-forgotten memory. And the police never talked to this classmate. Tova clicks her tongue. Adam was not a close friend, and the investigation was thorough at first. But with no eyewitnesses and zero leads, well, they wanted to close the case, I suppose. You think my mom could have had something to do with? Cameron lets out a low whistle. Tova looks up, her face inscrutable. I don't know, but she was seeing him, it seems. She might have been with him that night. She might be able to tell me. Her voice trails off, then she swallows before adding, Do you know how I might contact her? He shakes his head. I haven't seen her since I was 9. You haven't heard from her. Not even a birthday card. The words twist like a knife in his gut. How many times has he thought the same thing to himself? Aunt Jean always insisted his mother loved him. That she left because that's what was best for him. That maybe someday she'd conquer her demons and be ready for a relationship. But what demons are so powerful they prevent someone from buying a 99-cent birthday card and slapping a stamp on it? How often has he convinced himself she's actually dead? Because that hurts less than believing she could care about him so little. Nope, not even a birthday card. He rises and walks out of the alcove. His eyes are burning, heavy and wet, and he doesn't need her to see that. A good, hard blink or two will send the tears packing. If it were that simple, she wouldn't have let him miss out on being a part of your life. Aunt Jean's words crash through his skull. For all your mother's flaws, she was no dummy. If his father was dead, had died in some accident when they were both 18, well, that would be a pretty solid reason to never have brought him into Cameron's life. He squeezes his eyes shut. Could that be possible? It would mean that Tova is his. No, it can't be. She's so tiny and so weird. No one else in his family is tiny or weird. And it would mean his mother was something less than terrible. Not a victim, maybe even honorable like a martyr, rather than a perpetrator of his own suffering. That absolutely does not compute, so he pushes the idea out of his mind. Tova comes to stand next to him in front of the big middle tank. They watch a school of cod drift by, propelled by the tank's fake current. If they wait 4 minutes, Cameron knows they'll come by again. What a life, those endless laps. I'm sorry, Tova says. She places a hand on his shoulder. Doesn't rub or squeeze, just places it there, as if the contact might siphon off some of his pain. It's the sort of touch that is so warm as to be almost maternal. No, he pushes the thought away. She's just being nice, because Tova is extraordinarily nice, in spite of the stoic shell she puts on at first. He glances down at her, struck by how tough this tiny little lady is, how much grief her 90-pound frame has endured. And now she's absorbing some of his too. How much can one person take? In the tank, a big gray cow shark approaches, its blunt nose sweeping slow arcs along the sand, like it's looking for something. I'm sorry about Eric too. I'm sorry my mom might somehow be involved, Cameron says. Hardly your fault, dear, but thank you. The shark's beady eye catches notice of them, and it pauses for a second before moving on. Tova's mouth curves into a tight smile. Ought to get to the floors, I suppose. Ethan's lights are out when Cameron gets home from work, ruining his plans to smooth things over. Turns out Ethan's incomprehensible ramblings had some basis after all. And deep down, somehow, Cameron strongly suspects that it's more than a rumor. His mom was involved in this town's biggest tragedy. He keeps waiting for this information to make him sad or angry, as it should. But try as he might, he can't seem to make those emotions appear. What does it matter anyway? Let the rumors come. Towny chatter about Daphne Casmore can't hurt Cameron. He gives fewer than 0 shits about Daphne Casmore. He roots around in the camper's mini fridge until he finds one of those plastic lunch trays with crackers, cheese, and deli meat. Ethan brought a bunch of them home from the store last week and insisted Cameron take a few. They've passed their expiration date, so the store can't sell them, he explained. But this stuff is so processed, it's practically rot-proof. Cameron peels back the plastic, and a peppery smell wafts out from the little stack of salami in its square compartment. He assembles a little stack on a cracker and is about to take a bite when his phone dings. It's from Avery. You up? Just got home from work. he types out a whole explanation of the mess with his mother and Tova and Eric. The whole screen is filled with word vomit when he changes his mind and backspaces the characters. It's too much for a text message. Avery writes back, "Paddle this week, Wednesday afternoon. You're off Wednesdays, right?" Cameron grins into the dim camper cabin. He types, "What time for? Meet at shop." I can duck out a little early. At least she didn't suggest the crack of dawn. 4 in the afternoon, he can do. He sends back a thumbs up. "Bring a change of clothes this time. Or don't." Avery adds a winking face emoji. Something warm, like contentment, floods through Cameron as he slips into bed. What if it was almost 3 years ago, the afternoon when the Nitwits learned that Mary Ann Minetti's teenage granddaughter, Tatum, had gotten pregnant? But the memory comes slamming back into Tova's consciousness like it was yesterday. The rest of the Nitwits were properly scandalized by the news. But Tova, to her shame, felt only envy. 18. Tatum was 18, and naturally was faced with a difficult choice. The Nitwits debated her particular conundrum, but for Tova it was only, what if? What if Eric had been in Tatum's shoes? On the other side of the exchange of genetic material, of course, but what if he'd become a father at 18, before his life was truncated? Tova would have a grandchild. What a gift that would have been. Tatum went on to have the baby. Laura, Mary Ann's daughter, helped her out with childcare for this unexpected grandchild, and life went on smoothly, as far as Tova could tell. Surely, that wasn't always the case. Mary Ann's family had the means to help with the baby, and Tatum wanted to keep it, and the baby's father is still reasonably supportive and involved, from what Tova can tell. An ideal outcome, really. But what about other outcomes for similar situations? The possibilities are plenty. The birth date on Cameron's driver's license is seared into her brain. He was born that following February, and his mother, whoever she was seeing Eric, supposedly. What if the father Cameron is searching for isn't his father at all? Her mind combs through all she can remember of her conversations with the boy, anything he might have said about the man he's searching for. A real estate developer, that one who has those billboards. He said something about a ring and a photograph, but Tova can't recall any other details. Nothing about Cameron's comments had ever made her think of Eric. And whatever the situation is, Cameron is convinced he has the right man. Perfectly confident. Eric was confident like that. Tova trails a finger over the deck chair's armrest, tracing her nail on the wood grain. A night breeze nudges the sunflowers in her moonlit garden, causing their heads to bob, like a personal audience who agrees with her every wishful thought. But these thoughts are nonsense. Eric couldn't have had a child. Daphne Cassmore might have been dating any number of young men when she was 18. Carefree 18. The summer after senior year of high school. Who could judge her for that? It would be an exceptional stroke of luck for something like that to happen to her. But Daphne Cassmore would have found her somehow, surely. What mother would deprive her child of a grandparent? And anyway, Tova doesn't believe in exceptional strokes of luck. Cat alights on the deck railing and tilts his head at her. Once again, she wonders what on earth she is going to do with him. The closing of the sale of her house and her move to Charter Village are imminent. don't allow pets." She called to check. He poises as if he's about to jump on Tova's lap, but instead he leaps to the ground and curls at her feet, as if he's trying to distance himself already. Amazing bones. Tova is washing Kat's breakfast bowl when Janice calls to invite her to lunch. Lunch out on a Monday. What could this be about? Janice suggests they meet at the Shopway Deli, and she sounds surprised when Tova suggests the Tex-Mex place down in Elland instead. "Really? Okay. I'll pick you up on my way," Janice says. They're seated in a pleasantly plush booth with tortilla chips and salsa between them when Janice finally brings it up. "This week will be your last nitwits, huh?" Tova nods. "I guess you assumed because there are only 3 of us left, we'd let you off without a farewell party." "Oh, nonsense. I don't need a party." "Well, Barb said she'd bring cake." Janice dredges a chip through the salsa. "So we'll have that at least." "How thoughtful of Barbara," Tova says. "Cake sounds lovely." "Lovely," Janice repeats. "Tova, pardon my language, but would you cut the shit for once and tell me exactly why you think you have to do this?" "Ah, so that's what this is about." "I beg your pardon. I guess you assumed because there are only 3 of us left, we'd let you off without a farewell party." "Oh, nonsense. I don't need a party." "Well, Barb said she'd bring cake." Janice dredges a chip through the salsa. "So we'll have that at least." "How thoughtful of Barbara," Tova says. "Cake sounds lovely." "Lovely," Janice repeats. "Tova, pardon my language, but would you cut the shit for once and tell me exactly why you think you have to do this?" "Ah, so that's what this is about." "I beg your pardon." This Janice waves her hands around, as if the interior of the restaurant, with its quirky macrame wall hangings, is the offender. "Selling your house, moving out of Soul Bay. You've lived here all your life." "Charter Village is very nice," Tova says mildly. "Maybe it is, but these are our golden years. Why do you want to spend them with a bunch of strangers?" Janice's voice cracks. "What about us?" Tova starts to respond, but the words catch in her throat. "And furthermore," Janice continues, holding up a stern finger, like a judge in one of those courtroom dramas she enjoys watching. "What about Ethan Mack?" Tova starts. "What about him?" "Tova, he's gaga for you. Why can't you give him a chance? Ethan is a wonderful man, but Will and I were—" "Oh, stop. Look, I realize I haven't been in your shoes, but Peter and I have talked about it. When one of us goes, the other must move on. We're not that old, Tova. We still have good years ahead of us. Decades, even. 70 is the new 60. In spite of herself, Tova lets out a short chuckle. "Where did you hear that? One of those talk shows?" "Whatever. Please, Tova, rethink this. If it's really what you want, then fine, go. But it's not the only way. Janice, you must understand something." Tova folds her hands in her lap. "I am not like you and Mary Ann and Barbara. I don't have children who will come stay with me when I've had a fall. I don't have grandchildren who will stop over to unclog my drain or make sure I'm taking my pills. And I won't put that burden on my friends and neighbors." "There's your problem," says Janice softly, "assuming it's a burden. Charter Village might not be the only way, but it's the best way." Tova sets her jaw. "And besides, it's done. I'm going to sign the papers for the sale of the house on Wednesday." "And when do you move into Charter Village?" "Next week, but I'll stay in one of those hotels down in Everett." With a defeated smile, Janice says, I suppose Barb and I will have to come visit once you move in then. Maybe you can book us appointments at the fancy spa. Of course, Tova says. A chipper waitress arrives moments later, and with a cheery grin, spits out a list of specialty margarita flavors. Janice requests a diet soda. Tova orders black coffee. The waitress nods and trots away, but returns a moment later to apologize and explain that they don't have any coffee prepared at the moment. Not much demand for it in the afternoon. Would Tova like to wait 15 minutes for it to brew? Or might she be interested in something from the espresso bar? Cappuccino, latte, mocha. A small latte, I suppose, Tova says a bit reluctantly. Espresso bar. How very indulgent. On Tuesday afternoon, Tova readies herself for a trip to Shopway, her first since that disastrous dinner at Ethan's house. And her last, perhaps. She just needs to pick up a few essentials. The fridge is still half full, and her moving date inches closer. Never would she have thought she could go so long between grocery runs, but those freezer casseroles have had legs. All of the potatoes and noodles and gravy and cheese have added a certain plumpness to Tova's cheeks, which she found herself admiring in her bathroom mirror this morning after she bathed. After she dressed, she even dabbed a bit of blush on her cheekbones. 4 times before she leaves, she checks to make sure the Grateful Dead t-shirt is in her tote bag. This isn't simply a shopping trip, after all. On her way out the front door, she's somewhat startled to see the newspaper still sitting there on her front mat, coiled and waiting. She was so occupied this morning that it never occurred to her to take it in. Her subscription was supposed to be canceled, but when she pointed it out to the young man on the route the other day, he just shrugged and said he might as well bring her one as long as she was still there. He always has a bunch left over anyway. Tova had smiled and thanked him. He's a nice kid, and she gave him a good tip last Christmas. In any case, her crossword needs are now being met through other channels. Last week, Janice challenged her to a competitive crossword game through a message that popped up on her cell phone, and with one tap of a button, there were crosswords galore right there on the little screen. So many crosswords, as many as anyone could ever want. Isn't that something? Of course, Tova has won every match so far, but Janice is improving quickly. At the Shopway, Ethan is manning the deli when Tova enters the store. With a pen tucked behind his ear, he halts the conversation he's having with a customer mid-sentence and waves. "Hello, Ethan," she calls, her voice even. She lifts a shopping basket from the stack at the store's front. "Afternoon, love," he says, giving her a resigned look before going back to taking the order of the group crowded into the booth. Tova shops thoughtfully, giving each item she adds to her cart an extra layer of scrutiny. Jams and jellies are on promotion. Buy one, get one free. But Tova doesn't need 2 jellies. She might not even need one. Of course, she won't be needing her own jam at Charter Village, although her suite will have a small kitchenette with a refrigerator. She selects a small jar of raspberry preserves, which could be brought along if she doesn't use it up this week. 2 checkout lanes are running when she finishes, and she's relieved to see that Ethan has finished with the group in the deli, and is now tending the one on the left. It's no contest to choose that one, even though the line is longer. She arranges her modest collection of groceries on the belt, then carefully tucks the t-shirt, which she's rolled neatly, at the end, nestling it between her quart of milk and a waxy orange grapefruit. Congratulations on the sale of your house. Ethan clears his throat, as if trying to cough away the awkwardness. He rings through the bread, jam, coffee, eggs. Not looking up, he scans her packet of wafer crackers, weighs her single green apple. Finally, he picks up the white shirt, and he turns it over twice in his left hand while aiming the scanner with his right, looking for a UPC code before recognition dawns on his face. His mouth falls open as he allows the shirt to unroll. "Where on earth did you?" His voice sounds like it's caught in a net. "I mean, how did you find?" Tova straightens. "I bought it on the internet." "You what?" "It was one of those online auctions." "Janice Kim helped me," she admits. Suddenly stern, he asks, "How much did you spend on this, Tova?" "Well, I don't see how that's any of your concern." He rolls the shirt back up and gives it a perturbed shake. "These are expensive. Thousands of dollars." There are 3 customers waiting in line behind Tova now. 2 of them crane their necks, straining to soak up the drama. "There's no need to get upset," she hisses. "I'm simply replacing the item I ruined." Ethan holds the shirt close to his chest. "It was just a t-shirt," he mumbles. "It was important to you," Tova says, her voice shaky. "Many things are important to me." "I'm sorry," Tova whispers. "Don't say that, love." His large green eyes are heavy. "I'd give away 100 of those bloody shirts to redo that supper at my house." He holds the shirt back up, taking in the Grateful Dead concert image. He smiles at Tova. "You really bought this on the internet?" "Indeed. And I drove to Tukwila to pick it up." Ethan's eyes widen. "You drove all the way down there?" "Yes, on the freeway." "Well, there wasn't another practical route." "You're quite a woman, Tova. Did you know that?" Tova doesn't know how to respond, so she just holds out the stack of bills to pay for her groceries. But when she arrives back home, while she smears butter on a wafer cracker and slices the single green apple, she replays his words in her head on a loop. Tova meets Jessica Snell at an attorney's office down in Elland at 11 on Wednesday morning, as instructed, to sign her portion of the closing papers. The papers, it turns out, are not quite ready. The hard knot in Tova's chest softens briefly at the notion that she might not have to do this today. But it's a glitch with the copier. It will only delay things a few minutes. The receptionist apologizes profusely for this setback and offers Jessica and Tova coffee, which Jessica declines, but Tova gladly accepts. It's the watery kind, and the paper cup has a waxy aftertaste, but Tova sips it anyway. While they wait in a small conference room, Jessica tells Tova more about the buyers, which is not information that Tova asked for necessarily. It's a family from Texas. 3 little ones. The husband's job has relocated him, and he and his wife took a trip up this summer to scope out real estate. They fell hard for Tova's house, the view, the architecture. They said that although they'll be making plenty of updates, the house has amazing bones. "My father would be pleased to hear that," Tova says politely. The paperwork finally makes its entrance. A woman wearing slacks and a cantaloupe-colored blouse sits next to Tova and walks her through the forms. Tova's pen scratches on the paper as she signs her name. "The buyers do appreciate your willingness to close quickly," Jessica says. "Their agent wanted me to pass that along." "Certainly," Tova says. A quick closing suited her as well. Why drag it out? The Texans had been gracious, too, to push back the turning over of keys for a couple of days to accommodate her Charter Village move-in date. And this is a little odd, but they also noted that the house was phenomenally neat and tidy when they did the inspection, Jessica says, with a genuine smile. "Their agent told me the wife said it looked like something out of a magazine. I thought you might enjoy hearing that." Tova lets out a small laugh. "As I'm sure you're aware, I am nothing if not neat and tidy. Everyone in Soul Bay is aware of that. You'll be missed, Tova." With a smile and congratulations, the woman in the cantaloupe blouse shakes her hand, and then Jessica Snell shakes her hand too. Tova never liked shaking hands. Well, not with people anyway. Octopuses are another story, but she clasps. So it's done. Later that afternoon, Tova ventures up to the attic, to what little is left of the piles of linens and photographs. It's time to finish now. On the ceiling, the rafters glow in the afternoon sun. Tova eases herself down to lie on her back on the floor and stares up at the beams the way she used to when she was a teenager. Like the house is a great wooden monster, and she's looking from inside at its rib cage. It does indeed have amazing bones, and it will make a good home for someone. For this family from Texas. For their 3 little ones. Will the children use the attic as a playroom? Tova hopes so. She pictures 3 happy siblings, laughing together under the rafters, talking to one another in pint-sized Texas accents. Perhaps there will be more children. Perhaps the parents are not done yet, and the family will grow, filling the house, bursting it from the seams like the large clan from Ethan's unfulfilled dream. The parents will grow old atop this mountain of a family they've built, and even if parts of it crumble from time to time, there will be enough left to support them. They will not have to pack up tea towels alone. She drags in a long breath and sits up. "Enough of that," she says aloud. Enough of allowing one single summer night in 1989 to shape every last aspect of her life. Enough searching for answers that no longer exist. Enough of living with these ghosts in this house. Charter Village will be a new start. For the next 2 hours, she packages up the remaining towels and sheets and other odds and ends to a box of books she's keeping, packed half full so it won't be too unwieldy. She adds the Soul Bay High School yearbook where she first found Daphne Cassmore. She remembers the photo, the young woman's smiling face, now pressed between the pages of the heavy book. Had it been a fool's errand attempting to find her? Perhaps, but how could she not try? Wherever and whoever she is, Daphne Cassmore is the last person who saw Eric alive. Tova will never be able to stop her gaze from lingering on faces in crowds that bear even a slight resemblance to that yearbook photo. On the other side of the picture window, a spotless blue sky holds court over the water, whose ripples shimmer gently as a speedboat cuts a wedge-shaped wake across the bay. How strange it will be at Charter Village, whose campus is several miles inland. How strange to wake up in the morning and not see the water. I wish you could tell me, she says to the bay. She will always wish this, but even knowing what happened that night can't bring him back. Nothing can. She closes the box flaps and seals them up with tape. A big, bold line. Moth Sausage always played the same sequence of songs to end a show. Cameron strums the opening chords of the last number on his Fender, and even though the guitar isn't plugged in, the sound fills Ethan's small living room, where Cameron is sprawled on the sofa, waiting for his clothes to finish drying downstairs. It's Wednesday, after all, and Tova is always going on about how Wednesday is laundry day. Apparently, this must have wormed its way into Cameron's brain, because without really thinking about it, the first thing he did when he woke up this morning was bundle up his dirty clothes from the floor of the camper, grab his jug of knockoff Tide, and head for the utility room in Ethan's basement. With a showy strum, he hits one of the trickier chords just right. Hell yeah, still got it. He's hardly played this summer, and the instrument's coarse metal strings are sharp on the tender pads of his fingers, but it's a good type of pain. Yawning, he nests the guitar between two lumpy sofa cushions, then grabs a bite of cereal from his bowl on the side table and swipes milk off his chin with the back of his hand before standing and sauntering over to the front window. His camper looks kind of dirty from here, the glare of the sun highlighting the grimy windshield. Maybe he'll wash it this afternoon before he goes to meet Avery for their paddle date. Ethan's patchy front lawn is fading to a tawny brown. Everyone keeps talking about how hot and dry it's been. Hot and dry has a different meaning in Modesto, but lately Cameron finds himself nodding along, as if the Modesto is slowly draining out of him. When did that start to happen? Mornin'. Ethan comes through the living room, leaving the smell of soap in his wake. Cameron follows him into the kitchen. His beard looks damp, and he's attempted to slick down the wiry fuzz that normally floats over his mostly bald head. Instead of wearing a ratty old rock band tee or one of his usual flannels, he's got some striped golf-type collared shirt on. Cameron hadn't realized Ethan owned something so normal. The shirt is tucked into a pair of khaki pants that are an inch too short, the waist saddled under his bulb-like belly by a braided leather belt. Why are you dressed like an extra from Caddyshack? A corner of Cameron's mouth ticks up, teasing. Do you have another date with Tova? Ethan fills his tea kettle at the sink. Tova, no. With a click, he turns on the burner and sets the kettle on the coil. I mean, I'll stop over there this week to say goodbye, of course. Oh, right. Cameron wishes he could take back the Caddyshack jab. Doing an interview at the store today, Ethan says. He takes a travel mug down from the cupboard and drops in a tea bag of his usual English breakfast. Need to hire a new day manager, or a temporary one anyway. You heard what happened to Melody Patterson, right? Her little boy's got some awful disease. Had to be admitted to the Children's Hospital down in Seattle. She's taking an extended leave of absence to care for him. That's terrible, Cameron says. And it is. Melody Patterson is a nice lady. But it's Ethan's first words that sting him slicing through poor Melody's tragedy to spear him personally. A manager. Had Ethan even considered Cameron for the position? He remembers his first night here, drunk on expensive scotch, when he asked for a job at the store. Ethan starts going on about Melody's husband, and something about how their insurance is being a real pain in the arse, about the kids' coverage. Details that are surely none of his damn business, but Ethan clearly has no boundaries when chatting with his customers while scanning their milk and weighing their tomatoes. "Hey," Cameron interrupts. "Are you still taking applications for the manager job?" "I suppose so. Why, do you have someone in mind?" The tips of Cameron's ears burn so hot, they must be glowing. "Me, obviously. You." Ethan looks genuinely surprised. "Well, maybe." Then he shakes his head. "See, it's a manager job. Would normally be looking for someone with years of experience. Need to be familiar with all the systems. Inventory, point of sale, even a bit of bookkeeping. It's not to be taken lightly. Do you really think I couldn't do?" Cameron yanks back the words before they come tumbling out. "Do you really think I couldn't do your job?" He tries again. "Look, I might not have years of experience. I don't even have a degree or whatever. But we both know I'm smart." His voice wavers. "I'm really smart." Ethan's eyes widen. "I never said you weren't smart, Cameron." "Well then, I can learn." You could." Ethan pops the top on his travel mug. "If you really want to work in the grocery business, I'll show you the ropes." Nothing would please me more. But right this minute, I need to fill this position with someone already qualified. "Oh, give me a break." Cameron stomps over to the kitchen window, nearly tripping over one of the kitchen chairs on his way. What exactly are the qualifications to work at Shopway anyway? Running your mouth all the time. He turns back and glares at Ethan. Ethan's usual reddish cheeks grow even redder. Cameron knows he should stop, but he keeps digging. Airing the whole town's dirty laundry. Dig, dig. Talking shit about people's private lives. Dig, dig, dig. Spreading rumors about my mom. I was trying to find her. Ethan's voice is quiet but firm. "I was trying to help. I never asked for your help. I wasn't doing it for you." Cameron is about to fire back when Ethan's words catch up with him. "I was doing it for her," Ethan continues. "For Tova, to help bring her closure." From the basement, the dryer buzzes, the sound muffled through the kitchen floor. Cycle complete. "Whatever," Cameron mutters, stalking off toward his camper. He'll come back later for the laundry. It's a crappy, fitful nap, but it's better than nothing. Aunt Jean always said, when shit starts to go sideways first thing in the morning, go back to bed and start over. Sounds about right for today. Sounds about right for today. But at some point, Cameron must have fallen into a deep sleep, because it's no longer morning when he wakes to incessant buzzing. Afternoon light pours through the camper's windows, and he squints as he ruffles through his bedding in search of his phone. Shit, Avery. The paddle date. Is it past 4? The camper is hot and stuffy inside, the way it always is when it's been baking in the sun all day. Where the hell is his phone? What happened to the alarm he set? Finally, he finds it on the floor, under a dirty sock that must have escaped this morning's laundry roundup. He's about to answer, a string of apologies ready to stream from his sleep-slick tongue, when he realizes it's only 3. Then he registers the number. A Seattle area code, but it's not Avery. Hello, a woman's voice replies, Mr. Cassmore. Yeah, yes, that's me. Excellent. I'm glad I reached you. This is Michelle Yates with Brinks Development. Cameron sits straight up. I know you've contacted us several times trying to secure an appointment, and I apologize for the delay. Mr. Brinks has been out of town, but he has returned, and as it happens, he has an opening in his schedule later today. I know it's last minute, but would you be available to meet then? Meet with him today. This is Cameron Cassmore, the developer, correct? A note of doubt creeps into Michelle's voice. Okay, so that was a tiny fib. Michelle goes on. You left several messages a couple of weeks ago, looking to meet with Mr. Brinks about a new opportunity. All right, maybe it was an actual fabrication. Cameron clears his throat. Oh, yeah, definitely, that's me. He can't believe that story he spun on those voicemails worked. It actually worked. All these weeks of showing up at closed offices and empty bluffs, and it was this that worked. A big, bold lie. Ignoring the twinge of guilt that nags at him, he says, Yes, I can be there. What time? Michelle tells him to be there at 6 o'clock and gives him a Seattle address, which he scrawls on the back of a gas station receipt. You'll want to take the elevator all the way down to the basement, she adds, which strikes Cameron as odd. A basement office. As soon as he hangs up with Michelle, Cameron calls Terry, who answers on the fourth ring, sounding distracted. I hate to ask, Cameron says, but would it be a problem if took this afternoon off? I could still be there to clean tonight. I just have a thing, he inhales, then gives Terry the details about the situation with Simon Brinks in what he hopes is a professional manner. Sure, Cameron. Terry still sounds preoccupied. Had he heard a word of what Cameron said? Thanks, sir. And, maybe soon, could we talk about hiring me on permanently for the cleaning part? You know, like, not temporary. Sure. A flurry of muffled voices on the line. Hey, kiddo, I've got to run. No worries about tonight. Take your time, okay? Okay. He ends the call, shrugging off Terry's weirdness. Probably just caught him at a busy time. Then he opens his map app and enters the Seattle address Michelle gave him. It's a 2-hour drive, which means that at 4, he needs to be on the road, not on a paddleboard. Avery will understand. He'll stop by the shop on his way out of town and tell her in person. Shortly before 4, he pushes open the door of the Soul Bay paddle shop. A figure pops up from behind a rack of wet suits in the far corner of the store. To Cameron's surprise, it's not Avery. It's her son, Marco. The kid gives him a stiff nod, then ducks back down behind the rack without a word. Hey, Cameron says. Your mom here. She went on some errand. Marco is kneeling on the polished wood floor next to an open box, holding some black plastic thing with a trigger, and a thin strip of waxy-looking paper trailing from its snout. A pricing gun. I didn't know you worked here, Cameron says, poking at a display of bright orange flipper fins. These are new since last time he was here. They're lined up in a perfect row from smallest to largest. It looks like someone stole the feet from a family of ducks and strung them up on the wall. Marco grunts. Not like I have a choice. He slaps a price sticker on the tag of a neoprene life vest and threads its topmost loop onto a long metal peg coming out of the wall. Ah, compulsory child labor. A rite of passage, Cameron laughs. Marco doesn't respond. So, any idea when your mom will be back? Cameron glances toward the front door. We were supposed to meet here at 4. He checks the time. 5 minutes until. Marco looks up. Yeah, we were supposed to take a couple of boards out on the water, but something came up. Cameron bites his lip, stopping short of telling Marco the whole story. He doesn't owe any explanation to a teenager. You're standing her up. Marco's voice is flat. Of course not. She'll totally understand. Marco fires off another sticker. Right. And I came here to tell her myself. Cameron checks the time again. On the road at 4. The most important meeting of his life. He can't be late. He clears his throat. Thing is, I kind of have to go. Could you let your mom know I came by? Tell her I'm sorry for canceling. Sure, I'll tell her. Thanks, man. Cameron ducks out of the store, and by the time 4 o'clock hits, he's headed toward the freeway. The sob. Seattle is a dizzying maze of buildings and bypasses, tunnels and byways, skyscrapers that might be built right on top of the highway itself, like something from an impossible Lego set. There are exits left, exits right, viaducts and express lanes, the overpasses and underpasses, all curling around each other like a bunch of huge concrete spaghetti noodles jammed against the hillside that rises steeply from the water. He drove through it before on his way from the airport, but it hits him more clearly now. Compared to Modesto, this really is a different world. When he spots the exit for Capitol Hill coming up, he flicks on the turn signal. Stay right, then turn left, 3 blocks and a right. He'd memorized the series of turns, the post-freeway route through the city streets, just in case. Finally, he turns onto the right street and starts looking for the street number, drawing irritated honks from passing traffic as he inches along, scanning the tightly packed storefronts, coffee shops and juice bars, and vintage clothing stores with their goods spilled out onto sidewalk racks. It's 10 minutes until 6 on a perfect August evening, and the neighborhood bustles, a mixture of hipsters and neighborhood folks tethered to dogs, commuters with messenger bags and purposeful strides. Here's the address Michelle Yates had given him. He double-checks to make sure, because it's a plain gray door. After weeks of trying to get this meeting, this is Brink's development. He had expected some shiny office tower, but maybe this is how successful people do it in Seattle. Shaved yam instead of pastrami, and humble storefronts instead of steel skyscrapers. By some miracle, on his second circle around the block, he spots an open space right in front. He cuts the ignition and checks his phone. Still nothing from Avery. Should he send a text? Nah, he'll call her after. By then, he'll have a story about his father to tell. The slam of the camper's cab door is swallowed up by the busy city sounds. He feeds the meter with 2 crumb-coated quarters he digs out of the console. To Cameron's surprise, the plain gray door is unlocked. It opens to a nondescript vestibule, apparently an apartment building. On the wall to his left, there's a row of slightly dinged-up metal mailboxes, a half-dozen of them. Several flyers and pieces of junk mail litter the floor, On the right, there's a staircase that only goes up. Directly ahead, on the back wall, there's an elevator, and Cameron notices that it has call buttons for both up and down. Michelle had said to take the elevator to the basement. Down the rabbit hole, he says to himself as the elevator dings. Right away, as he exits, there's this weird smell. Something waxy and spicy, like cinnamon, out of place for the middle of summer. It hits Cameron as soon as the elevator doors open. It must be coming from the candles, which are everywhere in the dark hallway. Candles against mirrors on both sides, making it look like there are a million little flames going off into infinity. Upon further inspection, he discovers that they're fake candles, which makes sense. What fire code allows someone to put so many candles in a basement? What the hell is this place? He follows a threadbare gray carpet down the hall and around a corner, which deposits him inside the world's tiniest cocktail lounge. It's empty. A short bar, 5 stools tucked underneath. Warm light reflects off the brass ceiling tiles, giving the whole place a yellowish glow. On the bar, there's a small paper square propped in a holder. A menu. Mud Minnow's Bespoke Libations, it says at the top, followed by a list of drinks with ridiculous names. He blinks at the prices, making sure he's reading them right. Do people not realize they can get a 6-pack at any grocery store for half the price of one of these libations? He pulls out a bar stool and sits. Something clinks, and Cameron looks up to see a girl come through a doorway behind the bar. She has short, bright green hair that reminds Cameron of flattened grass. She balances a stack of highball glasses in each hand, and her eyebrows register the tiniest moment of surprise before she begins to unload the glassware into some unseen shelf down in the well. We open at 8, she says, without looking up. I have a meeting. Cameron clears his throat. With Mr. Brinks. The grass-haired girl looks up. The expression on her face is painfully blank, as if Cameron were the least interesting thing she's ever encountered. I'm serious, he says. Michelle set it up. He hopes it's okay to call Michelle by her first name. The girl shrugs. Okay, she says, ducking away. I'll let him know. Simon Brinks. Cameron has repeated the name in his head so many times these last 2 months, has studied so many photos of the coiffed man blown up huge on his billboards, that when this disheveled dude emerges from behind the bar with a tired smile, he almost doesn't believe it could be him. Hi, Cameron says, his voice suddenly shaky and nervous. I know who you are, Cameron. Behind the bar, Simon's smile broadens. You do, Cameron's heart hammers. But is it from nerves or rage? Somehow the idea of socking or extorting this guy seems preposterous. Why do you think I suggested this venue? Simon Brinks waves a hand around the tiny room. As I'm sure you've discovered, I have lots of offices and properties, but this place was originally for Daphne. It's the perfect spot for us to meet. Cameron's pulse is pounding now. For Daphne, is Brinks about to fess up to a lifetime of deadbeat parenthood, just like that? Simon smiles. You met Natalie. He tips his head toward the doorway behind the bar, through which the grass-haired girl had disappeared. She knows the whole story. The whole story. Cameron can barely force the words out. Well, sure. She's my daughter. His head whirls, a father and a sister. Before he can stop himself, his eyes dart to the doorway behind the bar again. girl with the strange hair really be his half-sister? Simon clasps his hands and leans on the bar. You have your mother's eyes, you know. My mother. Cameron swallows hard. Daphne always had those incredible eyes. Cameron sucks in an embarrassingly sharp breath. She did have pretty eyes, didn't she? He wonders whether he's inventing this, or if he actually remembers. Anyway, Brinks says, with a slight shrug that seems to knock the conversation in a more casual direction. Can I pour you a drink? A drink. I make a mean old-fashioned. A beer is fine. Whatever you have, Cameron blurts. His ears burn. Why does he care? Is impressing one's father a hardwired predisposition? Without a word, Brinks reaches down into a below-counter refrigerator and rises again with two long necks clutched between his fingers. The bottles hiss as he pops the caps. Cheers, he says, lofting one. Cheers, Cameron echoes. How bizarre will this story be later, when he tells it to Avery and Elizabeth in turn. So you have questions about your mother, naturally, Brinks says, after a long pull on his beer. Cameron pulls himself up by the shoulders. No more chicken shit. His voice is even when he says, I have questions about you. Oh, Simon cocks his head. Okay, well, everyone thinks I'm some sort of enigma, but for you, I'm an open book. He smiles. So, shoot. Why did you? Cameron swallows, then regroups before trying again. I mean, how could you? A sob messes up his throat. Why didn't he make a secondary plan for when the words wouldn't come? How could I what? Simon Brinks scrapes his chin. Let her go. Well, I cared about her. Cameron's face hardens, and his voice is pure acid when he spits out. But you never cared about me. You. Of course I care about you. You're her son. But what could I do once she was? I'm your son, too. Cameron's voice cracks. Simon Brinks takes a step backward, recovers. I'm sorry, Cameron, you're not, he says softly. I'm your son, Cameron repeats. Brinks shakes his head. That's never how it was with me and Daphne. But it must have been. To Cameron's horror, his chin starts to tremble. He knew this might happen, right? The whole thing being a dead end. He prepared himself for this, or tried to. So why is he about to lose his shit right now? Like I said, I'm not surprised you're here, Cameron. But why did you give her your class ring? Cameron fishes it from his pocket and drops it onto the bar. Simon picks it up, and a faint smile comes over his face as he examines it. When he turns it over and looks at the underside, the smile fades. This isn't mine, he says quietly. Oh, come on. I saw the picture. Brinks carefully places the ring on the bar. Daphne was my best friend, he says. Look, I know how that sounds, but we really were just friends. Best friends. Cameron is about to fire back. But then he remembers Aunt Jean's constant digs about him and Elizabeth. A heavy feeling sinks through him like a lead balloon. He's no closer to finding his father than he was 2 months ago. You never, slept with her. Cameron hates how crass the question sounds. No, I did not. Brinks chuckles. Then his face goes somber. Look, I'll do a cheek swab if you want. I'm 100% sure on this one. He picks up the class ring and turns it over again before replacing it on the bar. Hang on. I'll be right back. He returns a few minutes later with a beat-up hardcover book and something cupped in his hand. The book gives off a puff of dust when he sets it on the bar. The cover reads Solbay High School, class of 1989. presumably the source of all those photos someone scanned and posted, including the one of Simon and Daphne on the pier. Then Brinks extends his palm. This one is mine, see? Cameron picks up the ring and holds it in his left hand, while holding one he's brought with him in his right. The weight feels identical. So close, yet wrong. Brinks tips his head toward the back of the bar. There's a big, unfinished space back there. I use it for storage. But I suppose it's also sort of fitting that all this high school stuff lives down here. It was supposed to be our place, after all. Our place. What's that supposed to mean? Cameron turns the ring over, expecting to see the eel's engraving, but to his surprise, it says Sob. What's Sob? He asks. Brinks chuckles. My initials. I'm Simon Orville Brinks. Mind you, I don't advertise that, because the jokes practically write themselves. Lucky son of a bitch, huh? Cameron stares at the 2 gold rings on the bar top. You had it engraved with your initials. Did everyone do that? Most people did, I guess. Brinks shrugs. Lots of people tried to get cute with the personalization. A bunch of youth group types all got theirs with God. And I'm sure more than one kid had a ring that said ass. I thought about getting ass, but my mama would have shanked me. Do you remember anything about this one? Cameron picks up eels. Whoever he is, he must be a big fan of marine life. Or sushi. Did he pay extra for that 4th letter? Brinks shakes his head. I wish I could help you. You don't know eels, Brinks adds softly. I never knew my father either. Yeah, and somehow you still ended up a zillionaire. Cameron's shoulders slump. I worked hard, Brinks says, and there's an edge to his voice now. Look, I came from Soul Bay too. Do you know how your mother and I met, became best friends? No. Cameron honestly hadn't thought about this. Even when he thought they were together, he'd assumed they met at school, like everyone else. We lived in the same crappy apartment building. She lived there for a while our junior and senior year, Brinks says, on the wrong side of the highway. I didn't know there was a wrong side of the highway in Soul Bay. Brinks lets out a hard laugh. Well, these days, the whole place is sort of on the wrong side of the highway, but it's turning back around. His tone shifts. He's talking business now. Lots of development these last few years. I'm doing a waterfront condo project up there. Really nice units. Cameron nods. For a sparse second, he wonders whether Brinks would hire him to work the project. But he'd probably ask for references. And well, that's a no-go. Even for his former best friend's son. Anyway, Brinks leans over, propping his elbows on the bar again. I asked you to meet me here instead of at my regular office, because I thought you might get a kick out of seeing it. He picks up the cocktail menu, and staring at it, says, like I said, I made this place for her. Cameron looks around the tiny lounge, now thoroughly baffled. A ridiculously small bar in the basement of a nondescript apartment building on Capitol Hill for his mom. We talked about something like this together once we grew up a little. Mind you, this was back in the 80s, when speakeasies weren't a total hipster cliché. Brinks rolls his eyes. I don't even know how 2 teenagers come up with that sort of idea, but we used to spend hours talking about it. His face grows more somber. Of course, that was before her. Problems. Problems, Cameron mutters. Brinks is still studying the menu in his hands. She even picked the name of the place, strange as it is. He looks up with a half smile. Mud minnow. It's a tiny fish, Cameron cuts in. They live in rivers and other fresh water, can survive really bad conditions, extreme temperatures, hardly any oxygen in the water. So they're usually the last thing to survive when shit goes south. They're like the cockroaches of the tiny fish world, but with a much cooler name, Brinkscapes. How on earth do you know all of that? Cameron shrugs and explains that he read it somewhere once. I retain random knowledge. I kind of can't help it. Brinks laughs. You're exactly like your mother, you know. Cameron's mouth drops open. I am? Oh, absolutely. She wanted to apply to be on Jeopardy after we graduated. He clears his throat. Her family never understood her. She hid her real self from them, I think, even from her sister. Big, hot, fat tears hang in the corners of Cameron's eyes. He can feel that his lips are pressed into an embarrassing, involuntary grimace. That's just the face she made when something unpleasant surprised her, Brink says. Cameron presses a fist against his pursed lips. I guess I always assumed I got this weird photographic memory from my father. Well, maybe from him too, Brink says. Daphne never told me who your father was. Cameron snorts softly. That makes two of us. Daphne was an oddly private person sometimes. We were incredibly close, but I know there are many parts of her life she never shared with me. This was one of them. I'm sure she had her reasons. Yeah, well, because of her reasons, I grew up with no parents. I'm sure she had good reasons for abandoning me too. I have no doubt she did, Brink says, without a trace of sarcasm. She loved you, Cameron, more than anything in the world. I know that much. Anything she did, it was from a place of love. Something clatters in a semi-close sort of way, probably from beyond the door behind the bar. Is the grass-haired girl listening in on all of this? What was the daughter's name? Natalie. A wave of nausea hits him square in the gut. She knows the whole story. Her father's brilliant best friend who got pregnant and went off the rails, and the son who might come looking for them someday. As usual, Cameron is the last to know. Brink sighs. I wish I could tell you more. I feel terrible that you came all the way up here, expecting one thing and finding another. Do you know where she is? Cameron twists his hands together in his lap. Did he really ask that? Does he even want to know? But to his semi-relief, Simon just shakes his head and says, No, not anymore. I haven't seen her in several years. What was she, where? She was living in eastern Washington somewhere back then. She showed up at my house, needed cash, which I gave her, of course. But it was clear she was still struggling, Cameron. Still using. His brow creases. Maybe I shouldn't have given her the money. I don't know. Part of me wanted to drag her into my house, put her up in the guest room, fix her. But I had my hands full with Natalie already. And well, you can't fix someone who is determined to stay broken. Right, Cameron fakes a smile. I guess I'm a chip off the old block. Don't sell yourself short, Cameron. I can't even put trash liners in the right way. Brinks shoots him a puzzled look. At the aquarium. I've been working there, chopping fish and cleaning. And the trash cans, oh, never mind. Cameron cuts off his own pointless rambling. Simon Brinks, renowned real estate tycoon and speakeasy owner, from the wrong side of the highway, but bootstrapped his way into wild success, doesn't want to hear about janitor problems. After a long pause, Brinks says, Daphne would have been proud of you, Cameron. Yeah, I'm sure. Cameron slaps a $5 bill on the bar, hoping that will cover a Mudminnow's beer. Close enough, anyway. Brinks pushes away the cash, but Cameron is already halfway to the door. A new route. Back in the cab of the parked camper, Cameron smacks the steering wheel. He checks his phone, anticipating a message from Avery, hoping for an excuse to call her back and unload the events of the last hour on a sympathetic ear. But there's nothing. Well, now what? He drums his fingers on the dash and watches the steady stream of Capitol Hill foot traffic go by. People grabbing dinner, picking up dry cleaning, window shopping. All of them with their normal, happy lives. Screw them. How long does he sit there before the phone dings? When it does, he jumps. A text message, but it's not from Avery, it's from Brad. A photo. Cameron taps on it. A tiny baby squints back at him, its squishy red face wrapped up in a light blue blanket. It does look like an alien spawn, but a cute alien spawn. A single quadrant of Elizabeth's face is visible in the photo, but Cameron can tell she's beaming. Not dying from a precipitous childbirth, a benefit of the 21st century. Cameron closes his eyes and takes a deep breath. He texts back, "Bro, you're a dad." Brad responds seconds later with the head exploding emoji. While he's texting, he writes one to Avery too. "Hey, can we talk?" He fires the message off into the cellular network void, then shifts the camper into gear and pulls out of the parking space. Traffic is horrible leaving Seattle, but Cameron couldn't tell you whether he's been sitting in gridlock for 10 minutes or 3 hours. The camper creeps along, and brake lights from the sea of idling cars blend together, a haze of smeary red. On the passenger seat, his phone dings repeatedly, and while stopped he steals a look, thinking it might be Avery, but it's Brad again. More pictures of the baby. He shoves the phone under a fast food bag that's sitting on the seat. Out of sight, out of mind. But his mind has other ideas, and it will not shut up about them. From somewhere deep in his brain, a voice needles him. None of this was ever real, it nags. Too good to be true. This isn't your life. This is not your home. He wasn't your father. She's not your girlfriend. At least he has a job he doesn't hate. How many times has Tova assured him that Terry is definitely planning to offer him the permanent position, and that it's well deserved. Even Cameron must admit that his glass polishing has come a long way. He makes that shit sparkle, and he can do the entire loop with the mop, including all the random nooks and crannies, in under an hour now. But then, the needling voice cuts in. Why didn't he offer the job? Especially when Cameron asked about it this afternoon. "You're not as good as you think you are," the voice sneers. Not even qualified to run a small-town supermarket. "Shut up," Cameron mutters to himself, swinging into the leftmost lane and stepping on the gas. Eventually, traffic thins out, and at some point, the fuel light comes on. Cameron blinks at it. He's only 20-something miles from Soul Bay. He could probably make it, live on the edge. But he pulls off at the next exit and finds a gas station. The convenience store cashier gives him a pleasant smile as she rings up his bag of chips and a bottle of soda. Dinner. Cameron doesn't smile back. It's like he doesn't remember how. His face is frozen in neutral as the clerk asks him how he's doing tonight in a making conversation sort of way. He ignores the question and instead tells her add-on a pack of smokes. While gasoline glugs from the pump nozzle into the camper, he scrolls his phone, but it's purely reflexive, like his eyes are registering that words and photos are rolling by, but his brain isn't downloading any of it. Until a picture catches his attention. Katie. Did she unblock him? He taps her name, and sure enough, her profile loads. There she is, with her haughty smile. Like she invented the world, and he's just lucky enough to live in it. She's posted 1 million new pictures this summer. Cameron whizzes through her feed. In half of the photos, some asshat has his arms slung around her, always wearing some idiotic wraparound sunglasses, so that Cameron can't even see the guy's stupid face. Has he moved into her apartment yet? He probably remembered to put his name on the lease, works in some boring office, drives a brand new SUV, and has never once needed the 4-wheel drive, uses an electric toothbrush. They probably get together with his parents for dinner on the weekends. Screw every last one of these people with their normal, happy lives. Cameron will never get there, no matter how hard he tries. Not even here in Washington. He opens his map app, types in a new route. Sol Bay to Modesto. 15 hours. An early arrival. The doors are propped open when Tova arrives on Wednesday evening. It's a bit earlier than usual, but Terry had sounded so wound up when he called. She'd left her supper plate unwashed and poured a hasty bowl of kibble for Kat before hurrying down to the aquarium. Is this about the open door? Her stomach lurches, remembering what happened when Cameron left the back door open and Marcellus tried to escape. But a moment later, Terry comes sauntering out with a broad smile and a wave. "What's happening here?" she asks, approaching. "Big night. And I don't mean only because it's your second to last day." Tova tilts her head. "We're getting a delivery," Terry continues. He's downright giddy. "Never thought it would happen before you left. And I called you because I thought you'd want to be here to meet it." He laughs. Listen to me. Her. I thought you'd want to meet her." Who on earth is her? Before Tova can ask, a truck rumbles into the parking lot. With a series of loud beeps, it backs up toward the doors. A gruff-looking man loads a wooden crate from a refrigerated enclosure onto a forklift. At first, the delivery person seems keen to deposit the large box right there, but Terry talks him into helping him transport it inside. Clutching her pocketbook, Tova follows the two men as they guide the huge crate through the open doors and around the curved hallway, which seems to be quite a project. She trails them into the pump room where they deposit the crate. It sloshes audibly as they edge it onto the floor. In a flash, the delivery driver has vanished with the forklift. "Keep an eye on that for a minute, will you, Tova?" Terry says. "I need to go sign the paperwork." He trots away after the delivery man. Tova takes a closer look at the crate. On one side, in big, red, stenciled letters, it reads, "This side up." On the other it says, "Live octopus. Keep an eye on it." What's that supposed to mean? Tova asks Marcellus as she peers through the narrow glass panel on the back of his tank. The live octopus crate sits silent in the center of the room, so still that Tova wonders whether there's anything alive inside at all. What is she meant to be keeping an eye on? Marcellus waves an arm, a noncommittal gesture. He doesn't know either. I suppose we'll see, won't we? Tova muses. In any event, it looks like you're about to have a new neighbor. A couple tanks down from Marcellus. There's one that's been emptied. Pacific Nettle Sea Stars were there before. Where have they gone? The empty tank looks too clean. Its water too clear. Tova pokes her head out of the pump room. Terry's nowhere in sight. Quickly, she drags out the step stool and lifts the octopus tank's lid. Marcellus pokes the tip of an arm through the surface of the water, and Tova lowers her hand. He curls his arm around her wrist in a gesture that's well beyond familiar now, and there's something almost instinctive about it, like the way a newborn baby will clutch at its mother's finger. But Marcellus isn't a baby. As octopuses go, he's an old man. And now his replacement has arrived. Footsteps echo from the hallway, and Tova yanks her hand from the water, climbs down, and tucks the stool under the tank. She's drying her arm on the hem of her shirt when Terry strides back in, holding a hammer. What do you think? Shall we open her up? Your new octopus, Tova says, confirming. Yes, a bit ahead of schedule, actually. But she's a rescue, rehabbed by a group up in Alaska after she got trapped in a crab pot and tore herself up trying to get out. I couldn't say no. Terry cracks open one edge of the crate with the tail end of the hammer. Tova folds her arms. Ahead of schedule, Terry sighs. Marcellus is. Well, Tova, I'm sure you've noticed, but he's very old for a giant Pacific octopus. He heaves up the crate's lid, grunting. Feisty old man, though, isn't he? Determined to outrun his lifespan. But Dr. Santiago, and I aren't sure how much longer he has left. He was in such bad shape this morning. He might only have weeks or days left. I see, Tova says. She glances over at Marcellus's tank, but he must be tucked away in his den, because he's nowhere to be seen now. It's amazing how long he's lived. Terry shoots Tova a curious look. Did you know Marcellus was a rescue too? Tova lifts a brow, surprised. I did not know that. He was in rough shape when we brought him in. Missing half an arm, his body all chewed up. Didn't think he'd make it through the year. And here we are, 4 years later. Terry smiles and shakes his head. He's been a good boy, except when he's roaming around the building at night. Tova's pulse quickens. After all this time, now she'll be scolded for enabling, for throwing out that horrible clamp. At the look on her face, Terry says, It's okay, Tova. At the end of the day, I'm not sure any sort of security measure would have worked. He shakes his head again. The new one will have better manners, I hope. Inside the wooden crate is a steel barrel, its top fine mesh. Something sloshes and slaps inside. Well, let's take a look, shall we? I wish we could call her something, but I promised naming rights to Addie, and she stayed up half the night last night brainstorming and making lists. At the mention of his daughter, Terry grins. Tova knows Addie was 4 when she named Marcellus, so now she's 8, and still reveling in the joy of naming an octopus, which is rather sweet. She'll come up with something wonderful, I have no doubt, Tova says. The barrel's lid pops off easily, and Tova can't help but chuckle. Marcellus would have never endured a journey down the coast in such a flimsy enclosure. He'd have slipped out somewhere off the coast of British Columbia. There she is, Terry says softly. Tova peers in. The octopus is huddled in the bottom of the barrel, which makes sense because there's nowhere to hide in there. Tova is surprised at the creature's salmon pink color, so different from Marcellus and his rusty orange. Are you going to move her to the tank now? Not tonight. I need to wait for Dr. Santiago. She's coming first thing tomorrow morning. Tova watches the new octopus trail a tentative tentacle out from the clump she's balled herself up in, then yank it back after a second. You think she'll enjoy her new home? I honestly don't know, Tova. Her eyebrows raise, taken aback by his candor. She'd only been making conversation, after all. Don't get me wrong, we try our best, Terry continues. But look at Marcellus. We saved his life when we took him in, but he's never been happy to be trapped in a tank. He's rather bored, Tova agrees. Terry laughs. Life inside the Soel Bay Aquarium never did satisfy him. Tova leans on a nearby chair, easing the ache in her back, and tilts her head at the crate. I'll mop around it then. You don't have to clean back here, Tova. You know that. Terry carefully replaces the lid on the crate. I don't mind. It's something to do. Well, Cameron will help you. He should be here soon. He said he might be a little late tonight. Terry looks at his watch. With one final pat on the lid of the crate, he leaves, muttering to himself about water temperature and acidic balance. Tova is left alone in the pump room with two octopuses and a strange sense that something is wrong. Well, she mutters to herself, picking up her pocketbook. I suppose I'd better start on the floors. On her way to the supply closet, she peers out the front door, expecting to see Cameron's junky old camper parked next to her hatchback. But there's no camper. An hour later, Tova hovers in Terry's office doorway, her fingers turning over her key card. He's here late. She's glad she caught him. Shall I leave this on your desk after we're finished tomorrow? She says, holding up the card. Sure, sounds good. Terry drums his fingers on his desk. He still seems to be vibrating with excitement. I just got off the phone with Dr. Santiago. She's coming tomorrow to take a look at our new addition. She thinks we might leave her in the barrel a bit longer. I see, Tova says, trying to pump up the flatness in her voice. How can she explain to Terry that she doesn't particularly care about this new octopus? That as far as she's concerned, there will never be another Marcellus. Terry continues. Sounds like we might move her directly into Marcellus's old space when it's available. Tova swallows. So Cameron never showed up tonight. Terry stands and begins to gather his things, shuffling papers on his messy desk. No, Tova says hesitantly. Strange. I hope he's okay. Terry zips up his computer bag. And sorry you had to clean the whole place by yourself. I don't mind at all, Tova smiles. I will always fondly remember cleaning this place. Terry shakes his head. You're truly unique, Tova, and you'll be missed around here. That's very kind. I'll miss all of you as well. He's on his way around the hallway when Tova calls after him. Terry, one more thing. Thank you. Terry tilts his head. For what? For giving me this job. I didn't exactly have much choice, Terry says. What do you mean? When I hired you, I didn't have much choice. I knew you wouldn't take no for an answer. He grins. You're a very strong woman, Tova. Do you know that? Tova studies the gleaming tile. Her sneaker leaves a fleeting print as she shuffles her feet. Yes, well, it's good to stay busy. Terry gives her a look. I don't mean strong only because you can wield a mop like no one I've ever met. Although that is true. He grins again, more tenderly this time. You know, when I was a kid back in Jamaica, my great-grandma used to say she was old, but not cold. She lived to her late 90s. To her last days, she was in the kitchen baking raisin buns for us kids. She liked to keep busy too. Sounds like she was quite a woman. As you are, Terry clasps Tova's small shoulder with his large hand. If you ever change your mind, Tova, know that there is always a place for you here at Soul Bay Aquarium. I appreciate that. Terry treads carefully over the freshly mopped floors as he walks out. High and dry. When the front door clicks open, Tova has just finished putting the cart back in the supply closet. Has Terry forgotten something and come back to retrieve it? But it's Cameron she meets in the hallway. He's barreling toward the break room, eyebrows furrowed in angst. He stops short when he sees her, and the thunder on his face recedes for a moment as he registers surprise. He says, "I didn't think you'd still be here." Tova plants her hands on her hips. "Where have you been? Does it matter?" "Yes, it matters. This is your job, and you were supposed to be here hours ago." Tova purses her lips. "That's more than a little late. And you might know you missed a rather big night around here. There's a new octopus." Cameron doesn't respond. Something about the boy reminds Tova of a coiled spring. The stiffness in his shoulders, the stompy manner in which he's walking, the way he won't look at her. She lays a hand on his shoulder. "Are you all right? Did something happen?" He shrugs off her touch and starts pacing. "Did something happen? Let's see. Ethan's a nosy asshole who has zero ability to mind his own business and also has zero faith in me. So much for that friendship. My only other friends, back in Modesto. They just had a baby and the band is over. Speaking of Modesto, did I mention my shitty mom, who abandoned me? That's been a real bummer for, my whole life. My aunt tried to be a mom, and she tried her best, but she shouldn't have to keep parenting me. I thought I had a girlfriend here, but she's totally ghosting me. I guess she's pissed that I bailed on our date, even though I went there in person to tell her I couldn't make it because something came up that was only, the most important meeting of my pathetic life. Or so I thought." He stops, rakes in another breath. "Also, my luggage, from my flight up here 2 months ago, is apparently taking an extended vacation in Italy. Not that I even need it anymore." Tova realizes she has flattened herself against the tank behind her, as if all those words had been a strong wind. She straightens and pats her hair, like it might have been blown out of place too. She's not really following, but she nods as if she is. And that's not even the best part. Cameron digs in his pocket and pulls out a chunky ring. A man's class ring, it seems, although Tova only catches a glimpse of it, sitting on the boy's palm, before it's swallowed up in the angry fist clenched around it. He's pacing again. Bitterness like static electricity infuses his voice as he continues. The best part is that all of this was totally and completely pointless. It wasn't even him. Who wasn't who, dear? Tova lays a hand on his shoulder, but again he flinches away. He wasn't my dad. The reason I came to Soul Bay. The guy I spent all that time tracking down. He was just some old friend of my mom's. It isn't even his ring. Then whose is it? Guess I'll never know. Tova finds herself nearly speechless. Finally, she simply says, "I'm so sorry, Cameron." "Me too," he swallows. "I mean, because all of this was such a waste of time." "It's okay to be upset when you've lost someone," Tova says quietly. Cameron mutters something Tova can't quite hear, then stomps off toward the front entrance. She follows, keeping up as best she can. Is he really leaving? To her surprise, instead of out the front door, he heads into the pump room. She watches, astonished, as he navigates around the live octopus crate, still sitting there in the middle of the room, and yanks off the lid to the wolf eel's enclosure and drops the glass ring in. It floats silently to the bottom of the tank and vanishes in a cloud of sand. "Eels, this belongs with you," he mutters bitterly. Tova stares at the tank. What on earth? One of the wolf eels returns her gaze, its needle teeth gleaming in the blue light. She clears her throat. "Would you like to sit and have a cup of coffee, dear? Obviously, I'm finished with tonight's work, but we could talk through what needs to happen tomorrow. My last day. Make sure there's a smooth transition." "Coffee," Cameron says this like it's a foreign word. For a moment, he looks drained, like a wind sock fallen flat. He gives his head a quick shake, and just like that, the storm is raging again. "Nah, I just stopped by to grab my hoodie from the break room." He stalks out of the pump room, and Tova trails him. "But what about tomorrow?" "There's no tomorrow," he says over his shoulder. "Terry never offered me the job. Why would I stay? How incompetent do I have to be to get passed over for a job emptying trash bins and mopping floors? I mean, no offense." "Oh, I'm sure that's a misunderstanding. Terry has been quite distracted, the new octopus. I'm done with misunderstandings." He ducks into the break room and emerges a moment later with his sweatshirt tucked under his arm. "Anyway, I'm out of here." "What do you mean? Headed back to California?" Cameron avoids meeting her eyes directly. A sad, sardonic smile spreads over his face. "Road trip time. You're leaving now?" "Yep." Cameron's tone is clipped. "Would have already been gone, but being the idiot I am, I left most of my shit inside Ethan's house earlier today. Laundry. Even my guitar. Came back to get it." He holds up the sweatshirt. "Figured I might as well grab this too. You're leaving and you haven't told Terry. He'll figure it out. And what do you think will happen when you fail to show up tomorrow? He'll fire me. And who will prepare food for so many of our friends? Not my problem. It's not exactly rocket science." Tova gives him a stony stare. This is not the way a person should end employment. Cameron shrugs. "How would I know? I've never had a chance to quit a job. I always get canned. It's kind of my thing." He stomps into Terry's office. She follows and watches as he plucks a piece of paper from the printer tray and scribbles a note, which he folds and deposits on Terry's desk. "There. Is that better?" She picks the note up and hands it back to him. "Leaving your boss high and dry without proper notice. You're better than that." "No, I'm not." His voice cracks. He tosses the paper onto the desk. "I'm really not. Day 1361 of my captive. Oh, let us cut the shit, shall we? We have a ring to retrieve. Humans spare no judgment when it comes to wolf eels. If I had a clam for every time I heard someone call them hideous, or ugly, or monstrous, I would be a very plump octopus indeed. These assessments are not wrong. Objectively speaking, wolf eels are grotesque. Theirs is one of few enclosures I have never entered or explored, but that has nothing to do with their unfortunate looks. It happened long ago, before I was captured and imprisoned. I was young, naive, and looking for a place to crash, as you humans might put it, in the open sea. The rocky den beckoned. It would have been a perfect home for me. I did not realize it was already occupied. With my vast intelligence, I ought to have used more caution. As soon as I peered through the gap in the rocks, it struck. The wolf eel's needle teeth and fleshy maw are not only ugly, but quite strong. I paid for my mistake 3 times. First, I paid with my pride. Second, with one of my arms. The arm started to grow back the next day, but by then, it was too late. Third, with my freedom. Had my own poor judgment not brought about such injuries, perhaps I would have evaded my so-called rescue. With immense patience, I wait for Tova to leave. Unscrewing the pump housing has become more difficult lately, but with effort, I remove it. By the time I have worked myself halfway through the little gap, I am already feeling the consequences, as they come on ever more quickly these days. I do not have much time left. I speak to the wolf eels in soft platitudes as I enter their enclosure. The large male glares at me, his garish head hovering in the mouth of their den. After a moment, his female mate joins him. "You are both looking lovely today," I say, hugging the glass on the opposite side of the tank. The creatures blink. My organ heart pounds. I have no intention of lingering here, I promise, as I sink toward the bottom. Their tank bottom is made of sand, whereas mine is coarser gravel, and I am surprised at how soft it feels as I dredge through it, searching. The 2 pair watches, having emerged a bit more from their den now, their jutted jaws opening and closing robotically, as always. Their thin dorsal fins ripple like ribbons, but they do not approach. I sweep the sand at the base of the plant, and finally the suckers at the tip of my arm brush something cold and heavy. I snatch the chunky ring and curl it in the thick, muscular part of my arm, where I know it will be secure. I glance at the wolf eels, who are still watching my every move. I hope you do not mind my taking this. Even the short journey back to my tank saps my strength. I am weakening by the day. Still carrying the heavy ring, I slip into my den and rest, as I will need stamina for my next trip. The last one. A goddamn genius. The serpentine belt, Cameron discovers, is aptly named. The thing winds around under the hood of the camper like a very long snake. The dry air smells like dust and burnt-up brake pads, and the morning sun is relentless. Every few seconds, with a loud whoosh, a burst of wind smacks him in the side of the head as another semi-truck hurls down the freeway, like a parade of oversized beetles, mocking him with their menacing grills as he stands on the shoulder in front of the camper's popped hood. With one hand, he yanks on the snapped belt. In the other, he holds the new one from the glove box. "What in the hell?" he mutters to himself, staring at the vehicle's innards. He recognizes the major parts: engine block, radiator, battery, dipstick. Thingy that holds the blue stuff that cleans the windshield. The new belt was sitting there the whole time, right there in the glove box. Why didn't he have it replaced? That squealing noise. It was never going to go away on its own. It certainly did not go away during the last 12 hours of driving. Well, that that's not exactly true. The squealing did disappear, along with the power steering on this barren stretch of interstate outside Redding, 100-something miles south of the Oregon-California border. Is there anything Cameron can't fuck up? His attempt to flounce after a humiliating failure is itself a humiliating failure. How very meta. Okay, I can do this. He blows out a breath, then squints again at the video, propping the phone on the bumper. There's no other option. If he keeps driving, it won't be long before the engine overheats and shits the bed. Well, that's not exactly how the video described it, but it's not good. Besides, putting in the new belt can't be that hard, and he, Cameron Cassmore, is a goddamn genius. It's time he started acting like one. The eel ring. On Thursday afternoon, Tova's last day of work, Janice Kim and Barb Vanderhoof materialize on her porch with a rectangular box. "Come in, won't you?" Tova says. I apologize for the state of the house. All the packing is just. She sweeps an arm around the clutter. I'll put on coffee. That's one thing that hasn't been packed yet, the percolator. It will be the last thing to go. She takes the box from Janice, assuming it's some sort of casserole, but it's far too light. She sets it on the kitchen counter and flips open the lid, revealing a small sheet cake shaped like a fish. "Congratulations on your retirement," the icing reads. "You shouldn't have," Tova laughs. But it's accurate. I'm actually retiring. "At long last," Janice says, producing a parcel of paper plates and disposable napkins. "I'm sure you'll talk them into hiring you to dust baseboards at Charter Village," Barb adds, lowering herself into a chair at the kitchen table. "Well, I'm not ruling it out," Tova says, smiling. The percolator hisses as the coffee brews, and Tova stoops down to run her hand along Kat's back as the animal strolls into the kitchen. Janice regards Kat skeptically. "What's happening with that fella?" "Well, he can't come with me," Tova says. "I suppose he'll go back to living outside full time, unless one of you is in the market for a pet." Janice holds her hands up. "Peter's allergic. Plus, Rollo is terrified of cats." Kat leaps up onto Barb's lap, landing on light paws, and purrs loudly as he stretches upward and rams his furry head into her chin. "I'm a dog person," Barb says. She scratches behind Kat's ears. "My, you're soft though, aren't you? Did I tell you all about the cat Andy's kids found last year? Lives in their bedrooms now, sleeps with them under the sheets and blankets. I told Andy she needed to make sure the thing was treated for fleas, because you never know what animals bring in from outside, do you? Anyway, then she said, 'Look, Barb, he's totally into you.'" Janice giggles. Kat is licking the back of Barb's hand now, as if he's grooming her, still purring like a buzzsaw. "I already treated him for fleas, of course," Tova says pointedly. Barb looks from Janice to Tova. "But I'm a dog person," Tova laughs. "People can change, Barbara. Even old folks like us," Janice adds. "Oh, all right, I'll think about it," Barb mumbles. But she's rubbing Kat on his gray belly now. His eyes are closed in bliss. Tova pours everyone coffee. "Have you both had supper? I could heat something up." "Oh, you don't need to do that." Janice waves her off. "Not with everything else you've got going on here." A saucy smile curls Tova's lips. "Let's have cake for supper." Tova cleans alone on her last shift at the aquarium, her last time mopping the circular hallway. A final swipe of each pane of glass. As she finishes up, she takes extra care to scrub one last time under the sea lion statue's tail. Who knows when it will be attended to again? Funny how, when she started this job, having only sea creatures for company was the thing she liked most about it. It was something to do, a way to keep busy while keeping to herself. No need to get her hands in anyone else's business. But now, cleaning alone seems oddly wrong. Cameron should be here, without a doubt. The surety of this sentiment surprises her, but he's probably in California by now. After finishing, she makes one last trip down the dim hallway. To the bluegills, she says, "Goodbye, dears. The Japanese crabs are next. Farewell, my lovelies. Take care," she says to the sharp-nosed sculpin. "So long, friends," to the wolf eels. Next door, Marcellus's enclosure seems calm and still. Tova leans in and scrutinizes the rocky den, looking for any sign of him, but there's nothing. She hasn't seen him all night. She goes back into the pump room, but can't see him from the rear, nor from the top looking down, either. She puts the stool back and hovers over the barrel, where through the screen she can see the new lady octopus still curled, compact, on the bottom, surrounded by a scattering of mussel shells. Did you see anything? Is he gone? She jams a hand over her mouth. Did he? A choking sob steals the word from her. The new octopus curls up tighter. Tova returns to the hallway and places a hand on the cool glass front of Marcellus's tank. No point in saying goodbye to rocks and water. The single tear that leaks from her eye rolls down her wrinkled cheek and falls from her chin before landing on the freshly mopped floor. Terry's desk is a disaster when Tova goes in to leave her key card there, as she had promised to do. With a defeated shrug, she leaves the plastic card on top of the mess. The new octopus curls up tighter. Tova returns to the hallway and places a hand on the cool glass front of Marcellus's tank. No point in saying goodbye to rocks and water. The single tear that leaks from her eye rolls down her wrinkled cheek and falls from her chin before landing on the freshly mopped floor. Terry's desk is a disaster when Tova goes in to leave her key card there, as she had promised to do. With a defeated shrug, she leaves the plastic card on top of the mess. Her sneakers squeak on the floor as she crosses the lobby. She'll throw the sneakers out when she's finished tonight. They're battered from years of cleaning here. Not even the second-hand shop would want them. Short of the door, she stops in her tracks. There's a crumpled brown object on the ground, right in front of the door, as if blocking her way. She squints through the dim blue light. A paper bag. How could she have walked right past it on her way in? A tentacle flickers. Marcellus. Tova gasps, rushing over and dropping to the hard tile floor beside him. Her back pops loudly, but she hardly notices. The old octopus is pale, and even his brilliant eye seems diminished, like a marble that's gone cloudy. She places a gentle, searching hand on his mantle, the way one might touch a sick child's forehead. His skin is sticky and dry. He reaches an arm up and winds it around her wrist, right over the silver dollar scar, which has now faded to a ghostly ring. He blinks, giving her a weak squeeze. "What are you doing out here?" she says, softly scolding. Let's get you back into your tank. She unwinds his tentacle from her wrist and stands, then tries to lift him, but her back strains, an ominous pain shooting through her lower spine. Stay here, she commands, then hurries off to the supply closet as quickly as her body will carry her. A few minutes later, she returns, wheeling her yellow mop bucket. Inside, several gallons of water slosh, moved there from his tank with the old milk jug Tova keeps in the supply closet. Relief washes over her when he blinks. He hasn't gone yet. She sops her cloth in the tank water and wrings it over him, wetting his skin. He heaves one of his strange, humanesque sighs. This revives him enough to move, it seems. With effort, he lifts an arm. Tova pulls the bucket up right beside him, and she gives his bottom, or what she supposes might be the equivalent of his bottom, a little boost as he heaves himself up over the bucket's plastic yellow rim end, plops into the cold water inside. What are you doing out here? She asks again. Then she sees it. Something chunky and gold glimmers on the floor, right in the spot where Marcellus had lain crumpled. She crouches and picks it up. And Sol Bay, class of 1989. She'd thought it looked like a class ring yesterday when Cameron mysteriously hurled it in with the wolf eels. How did Marcellus get it out of there? And why? And Sol Bay, class of 1989. Is this Daphne Casmore's ring? But it's a man's ring. Cameron had believed it was his father's. It sits on her palm, cold and heavy, like a memory. Eric had one just like it. She was so proud, as all parents are, of what it symbolized. She assumed he had been wearing it on that night. A ring also lost to the sea. She turns the ring over, squinting at the letters engraved on the underside. Her heart starts to beat in her eardrums. She wipes the ring on the hem of her blouse and reads it again. It cannot be. It is. Eels. Eric Ernest Lindgren Sullivan. The very low tide. The revelatory bits swimming around in her mind crash into one another, begging to be linked together. There was a girl, Eric, and the girl. Eric fathered a child that grew up away, unknown. She can't believe she never saw it before in so many of Cameron's mannerisms. In that heart-shaped dimple on his left cheek, the one she always admired, although she could never put her finger on why. You knew, didn't you? She says to Marcellus in the bucket. Of course you did. She leans down and touches his mantle again. You're so much more intelligent than we humans give you credit for. Marcellus lays the tip of one of his arms across the back of her hand. Tova crumples to the ground again, this time propping her elbows on the rim of the bucket. Once the hot, fast tears start spilling, she's powerless to stop them. Droplets pelt the surface as her thin shoulders heave, falling faster with each monstrous sob. No one is here. No one is looking. Throwing caution away, she allows the grief to course through her. Finally, the tears slow to a trickle, punctuated by hiccups. Her eyeballs feel hot and dry. How long does she remain in this state of unmitigated grief? It might be minutes or an hour. When she lifts her head at last, her stooped shoulders ache. What am I going to do without you? She says, dodging a hiccup, and he blinks his kaleidoscope eye, which is now more roomy than ever. He might only have weeks or days left, Terry said. She sits up, swiping away the tears with the back of her hand. For that matter, what am I going to do with you? She stands and squares her shoulders, shrugging the soreness out of her back. Come on, my friend. Let's take you home. If there were any straggling fishermen or late sunset walkers on the Sol Bay waterfront that night, they would have been treated to quite a sight. A 70-year-old woman, 90 pounds at best, pulling a 60-pound giant Pacific octopus in a yellow bucket down the boardwalk toward the jetty. Tonight, though, the only witnesses are seagulls, and they scatter from the trash bin, lobbing indignant squawks at Tova as she wheels Marcellus by. It is not a fast journey by any means, but Marcellus trails an arm out each side of the bucket, like he's riding in a car with the windows down. Tova laughs. The breeze feels nice, doesn't it? The tide is way out. Tova can barely hear the waves lapping on the rocks. It's so far out. Feels like it must be a mile away from the waterfront path. Moonlight gleams on 100 shallow pools, scattered like huge silver coins across the naked beach. This is going to get bumpy, Tova warns. The jetty, an engineered break wall of rocks and boulders, reaches across the bare beach and eventually out to the water, curving gracefully like a ballerina's arm. On a summer afternoon, it will teem with beachcombers and adventurous picnickers, those looking for the most picturesque spot to sit and lick ice cream cones. Now, it's empty but for a lone seagull posted at the very tip. Wheeling the bucket across the jetty's flat but pebbly top is no small task. Later, her back will certainly hurt. But finally, Tova and Marcellus make it nearly to the end, where the low tide water is at least a couple feet deep below the rocks. From the tip of the jetty an arm's length away, the lone seagull glares at them, then lets out an atrociously loud squawk. Oh, quiet, you, Tova scolds, and the bird flaps off. She lowers to sit on a rock slick with salt water. Trailing a hand in the bucket, she clears her throat before commencing the short speech she's been rehearsing in her head during their journey down to the beach. I must thank you, she begins, and he clasps her arm one last time. Terry mentioned you were rescued. I suspect you might rather not have been saved, but I am glad you were. She blinks back tears. Not again. You led me to him, my grandson. Her voice falters on these last two words, but a warmth seeps through her at the same time. Two words she never thought she'd say. If only Will had been here to meet him, and if only Modesto wasn't 1,000+ miles away. You stole his driver's license. You naughty thing, she chuckles, and his arm squeezes her hand as she shakes her head. You tried to tell me, and I wasn't listening. Somewhere high in the night sky, an airplane cruises by, the faraway roar of its engine echoing over the calm bay. It's unfair that you spent your life in a tank. And I promise, Marcellus, I'll do everything I can to make sure your replacement is the most pampered, intellectually stimulated octopus. The weight of her own words hits her. She's not going to Charter Village. She can't. After a deep breath, she goes on. We must say goodbye, friend. But I'm glad Terry saved you, because you saved me. Slowly, she tips the bucket. It's about 3 feet down to the water. For a moment that seems extended in time, before gravity catches up, Marcellus's arm remains wrapped around her hand, as his strange, otherworldly body hangs in midair, his eye fixed to hers. just as she's about to be pulled down with him. He releases and lands with a heavy splash in the night black water. "Every last thing, my sweet boy," Tova says, gazing out from her usual bench on the pier next to the aquarium. Under the silver moon, the water sparkles back. The events of the last 2 hours hardly seem real, to say nothing of the events of the last 2 months. Marcellus is gone. Cameron, her grandson, is gone. As of tomorrow, her house will be good as gone. But she won't be moving up to Charter Village. Tova will not be gone. What will she do? She hasn't a clue, so she sits on her bench, staring at the water for some length of time that's amorphous, immune to ordinary laws of the world, like a huge octopus reshaping its body to slip through a tiny crack. At some point, she checks her watch. It must be very late by now. 1:45. It's almost a new day. Her first day as a grandmother. Eric didn't know he'd fathered a child. How could he end his own life with a child on the way? He couldn't have. And he didn't. She clings to this theory, her thin fingers gripping tight on the bench. It had to have been an accident. Drunk kids, impaired judgment. He would have been a wonderful father. Yes, he was only 18, but look at Mary Ann's granddaughter, Tatum. She did just fine. Eric would have loved Cameron to pieces. Everything, every last thing could have been so different. "Excuse me, hello." A woman's voice rings out across the pier, startling Tova from her reverie. Who else could be out here at this hour? Someone wearing short athletic shorts and a bright pink sweatshirt is running up the pier at an urgent clip. Tova realizes it's the young woman who owns the paddle shop just down the boardwalk, next to the realtor's office. "Hello." Tova wipes her eyes and adjusts her glasses, then rises from the bench. "Are you all right, dear? It's quite late to be out for a jog." The young woman slows to a trot as she nears the bench, out of breath. "You're Tova." I'm Avery," she says, panting. "And I wasn't out for a jog. I was finishing up paperwork at my shop down the road, and I saw lights on. Figured someone was at the aquarium." There's a quiet desperation in her eyes that Tova recognizes all too well. The look of someone trying to hold it together. She follows Avery's gaze back to the aquarium building, where the lights are indeed still on. The yellow mop bucket is back in the closet. Tova had planned to turn everything off and lock up on her way out, whenever that may end up being. Avery swallows. "Anyway, I was thinking it might be Cameron." "Yes." A look of relief washes over her face. "Is he here?" "I'm afraid not." "Do you know where he is?" "I've been calling him all afternoon, but he's not answering his phone." Tova shakes her head. "He left, went back to California." "What?" Avery's mouth drops open. "Why, that's a rather complicated question." Tova's tone is measured. She sinks back into her spot on the bench, and the girl sits at the other end, tucking her bare legs underneath her. Tova goes on, I suppose, in his mind, too many misunderstandings. Avery's eyebrows knit together. Misunderstandings, his words exactly. She raises a brow at the young woman. "I'm quite certain he thinks you are." "Oh, how did he put it? Ghosting him?" "What?" Avery leaps up. "He stood me up, and then sent me some message saying he needed to talk. When has that ever meant anything good?" She leans on the railing. "I'm the one who should be pissed. I only came over here because I was worried about him." Tova recalls Cameron's diatribe in the hallway at the aquarium and is poised to tell Avery about it, but hesitates. She ought not to meddle in his business. But well, he's family, and isn't this what families do? The thought almost makes her laugh. Perhaps against her better judgment, she finally says, "I believe he did try to let you know he couldn't make it." "No, he didn't. He said he stopped at your shop." Tova shakes her head. Another misunderstanding, I suppose. Avery leans on the railing and drops her forehead onto her curled fist. She mutters, "Marco, I beg your pardon, my son. He's 15. He was in charge of the store while I ran to the bank. I asked if Cameron had called or come by, and he said no. I should have known something was up when I caught his cocky smirk out of the corner of my eye." Avery gives the railing a frustrated smack. "I'm trying my hardest, I swear to God. But my kid's such a little turd sometimes. All kids are terrible sometimes." Tova rises and stands next to the young woman. "Maybe your son was trying to protect you." "I don't need protecting," Avery huffs. "And I should have seen through it. Don't blame yourself, dear. Being a parent is not for the faint of heart." After a long pause, Avery says, "So Cameron left for California because of me." "Well, it wasn't just that. There was the big misunderstanding. The one about his so-called father. Oh crap, that meeting. It didn't go how he thought it would." She groans again. "I should have called him yesterday. The shop got busy, and I was mad." She pulls a cell phone from the pocket of her shorts. "I need to talk to him." Tova watches as Avery dials. The call goes straight to voicemail. "He's really gone, isn't he?" Avery says softly. "Maybe so." The two women watch the moon-bathed water in silence for what feels like a long while. Finally, Avery says, "It's peaceful here. I never come down the pier anymore." "It's my favorite place," Tova says quietly. Avery drops her gaze to the black water far below. "I talked someone down from this ledge once. Stopped her from, good heavens." In a half-choked voice, Avery goes on. "It was a woman, right here in this spot. A few years ago. I was out paddling super early in the morning, and she was sitting on the railing. Talking to someone herself, I guess. She looked rough, like she was on something." "I see," Tova says, her voice faint. She kept talking about a horrible night, an accident, a boom. A boom gives a little nod, finding herself unable to speak, and the girl continues. "I always assumed she must have been in combat or something. Trauma from an explosion, maybe. A boom." Tova closes her eyes, imagining how easily it could happen. Something knocks the bow off course, and a gust of wind catches the newly slackened sail just the wrong way at just the wrong moment. The boom swings wildly, smacks his head, knocks him overboard, an accident. It could have happened that way or any number of ways. Captain of the crew team, an accomplished sailor. But there was that stolen beer. There was a girl. "Sometimes I wonder whatever became of her," Avery says. "Whether she's still alive. Whether my saving her mattered." With a stiff inhale, Tova looks Avery in the eye. "It mattered. I'm glad you saved her," she says. And she means it. Expensive roadkill. At mile marker 682, Cameron stops obsessing over the engine temperature gauge. It worked. He really fixed it. The camper is not going to blow up in the middle of the interstate. At exit 747, he lets out a juvenile chuckle. The town of Weed. He puts his flashers on and pulls to the shoulder, intending to snap a pic of the sign to send to Brad. Because weed, California, is never not funny, but his phone's not in its usual place in the cup holder. Weird. Did he leave it in the back of the camper, maybe? He keeps driving. At mile marker 780, he realizes why he couldn't find his phone. He left it on the front bumper, right where it was when he was changing the belt. He can practically see it sitting there, which means, by now, it's an expensive piece of roadkill. He lets out a wild laugh. He hasn't slept in almost 30 hours. At a truck stop somewhere in the Rogue River Valley, he makes the smart decision to park and take a 6-hour nap. When he wakes, he splashes his face with cold water in the public restroom and buys a black coffee to go from the diner. On his way out, he tosses a mostly full pack of cigarettes in the trash. At or around exits 119, 142, and 238, he dwells on his idiotic resignation note. At exit 295, he starts composing an apology in his head. At a bridge crossing the Columbia River, he re-enters Washington State. Northbound, of course, he's been going north. Going back to do things the right way. The Dollar Horse. For the last time, Tova boils water for coffee on her stove. Its lacquered top gleams, avocado green against the black coils, polished last night. Spotless. Could it possibly matter? It will almost certainly be ripped out, replaced by one of those sleek new ranges. No one wants a decades-old appliance, even if it works perfectly well. Tova had been approved for accelerated check-in at Charter Village, something she'd lobbied after for weeks. Her premier suite would be available next week. She left them a telephone message first thing this morning, at whatever absurdly early hour she awoke, assuming she slept at all last night. The whole thing is a blur. Charter Village has yet to call back, but most likely it's simply because their office isn't open yet. It's only just past 7. Regardless, Tova has no intention of going. She's had a busy morning, dusted all of the baseboards, wiped down the windows, polished the hardware on the cabinets, scrubbed every last doorknob. She should be exhausted, but she's never felt more energized in her life. Without curtains or furniture, every sound she makes echoes against the naked walls and floors, and even the hiss of her spray bottle seems too loud. But keeping busy is good. Cleaning is always good. It's something to do. Where will she go? She's supposed to be out of the house by noon. The movers who took most of the furniture yesterday have already been notified that there will be a change of destination. Thankfully, someone answers their phone at the crack of dawn. But what will that destination be? A storage unit, perhaps. As for herself and her personal effects, Janice and Barbara both have spare bedrooms. At a decent hour, she'll call Janice first. Perhaps she might alternate between them until other arrangements can be made. Her floral print canvas suitcase, the same one she took on her honeymoon with Will, is packed and ready to go. The thought of spending the night in a bed that isn't her own thrills and terrifies her, in turn. When something rustles on the front porch, she startles. She sets her coffee cup down. It can't be Cat. Barbara sent a photo last night of Cat. He's doing all right, although at first Barb had tried to keep him exclusively indoors, and this agitated him greatly. So he comes and goes as he pleases. Tova still isn't sure how to respond to photos she receives on her cell phone, but seeing Cat's whiskered face, his yellow eyes with their hallmark look of mild disdain, had made her smile. Then the doorbell rings. When she opens the front door, she can't believe her eyes. Cameron's eyebrows are creased anxiously, like Eric's when he was nervous about a school exam. For a quick moment, something nostalgic catches in Tova's throat, thinking of how many times she wished Eric would somehow appear on her doorstep like this. Tears spring to her eyes. "Hi," Cameron says, shuffling his feet. All Tova can manage is "Hello, dear. Sorry I was such a jerk the other night. You were right. I shouldn't have left." Cameron jams his hands in his pockets. "And sorry to show up here so early. I would have called, but well, bizarre story there. It's quite all right." Tova holds the door open with an arm that feels like it belongs to someone else, like she's out of her own body. "I realize you owe me absolutely nothing." Cameron's voice is like a live wire, buzzy. "But can you tell me what time Terry normally gets in? I need to talk to him, in person. Around 10, if I'm not mistaken." 10. Okay. Cameron lets out a long breath. "How mad do you think he is at me right now?" "Not mad at all, I'm quite sure." Cameron gives her a confused look. Tova shuffles across the foyer to where her pocketbook hangs on the otherwise empty set of pegs. By the door end pulls a folded paper from the front pouch. A conspiratorial smile overtakes her face as she hands it to him. "My note." His jaw drops. "You took it." She inclines her head. "Mind you, I shouldn't have, but I did." "But why?" "I suppose some part of me didn't believe you when you insisted you were the type of person who would shirk a job. So then, Terry doesn't know I left. I believe he is none the wiser." Cameron's cheeks flush. "I don't know how to thank you, and I don't know why you'd have such faith in me. Not like I've earned it. There's something else she must show him, of course. Something far more important. And where have her manners gone? Please, come all the way in." She ushers him through the foyer. "And I'd invite you to sit, but..." She sweeps an arm around the empty den. "Wow, this is a nice house." Tova smiles. "I'm glad that you think so." Regret stabs at her. The boy's great-grandfather built this house, and this is the only time he'll ever set foot in it. "Wait here a moment. I have another thing to give you," she continues, before hustling off to the bedroom and her suitcase. A minute later, she returns. She holds it out to him, then drops it in his upturned palm. He turns it over, and confusion knits his brow. That engraving, the one that flummoxed him. He thought it meant eels, like the sea creature. Why on earth would anyone put that on a class ring? At the thought of this, Tova suppresses a smile. Even the most brilliant minds are mistaken sometimes. His full name, she says, was Eric Ernest Lindgren Sullivan. Cameron's lips part, soundless. Tova waits. She can almost see the wheels turning in his head. Eric was just like that. How it showed on his face when the gears were grinding in his brain, which they always were. There is so much about Cameron and Eric that is alike, but not everything. Not his eyes. Those must be his mother's, Daphne's, their lovely eyes. Tova has never been much of a hugger. But when Cameron's face starts to break apart, she finds herself pulled to him like a magnet. His arms wrap around her neck, squeezing her against his chest. For what seems like a very long time, she rests her cheek against his sternum, which is warm. She can't help but notice that his t-shirt appears to be stained and smells oddly like motor oil. Perhaps that's intentional. Never again will Tova make assumptions about a t-shirt. He stands back and says with a dumbfounded grin, "I have a grandmother." "Well, how about that?" she laughs, and it's as if a valve inside her has been released. "I have a grandson." "Yup, looks like you do." "What happened to California?" He shrugs. "Changed my mind. You were right about not quitting. I'm better than that." Surveying the den, he gives an appreciative nod. "This really is a cool house. The architecture. Your great-grandfather built it." "No shit." A look of astonishment crosses Cameron's face. He walks over to the fireplace mantel, the one that once held the row of frames featuring his father, and touches it tenderly, almost hesitantly, the way one might lay a hand on a sleeping animal's flank. Tova follows. I've been fortunate to enjoy it for 60+ years. She lifts her wrist, inspecting her watch. And 3.5 more hours. Holy crap, that's right. You sold it. It's okay. I need to let it go. Too many ghosts. Tova isn't sure she believes the words, but she's becoming accustomed to them, at least. Cameron studies his sneakers. "I guess I'm glad I caught you here then, before you moved to that retirement home." "Oh," Tova says, swatting the air as if to clear away his words. "I'm not going there. You're not. Heavens, no. Where are you going then?" An unfettered laugh escapes from deep in Tova's chest. "You know what? I don't know. To Barbara's or Janice's for a while. Until I figure out what comes next." "Good plan," says Cameron. "I mean, that's coming from a guy living in a camper." He grins, and the heart-shaped dimple on his cheek indents. And for a moment, he looks every part the impish grandson. Tova glances down, checking to make sure her slippers are still contacting the floor, because it feels like she's aloft, floating, unfurling toward the ceiling with unwitting elegance, like Marcellus in his old tank. Her heart is full of helium, lifting her skyward. She chuckles. "I suppose we're both homeless then." She gestures to the hallway. "Would you like to see where your father grew up?" Eric's old bedroom had been the most difficult to clean. 3 decades, it sat empty. She swept the room regularly over the years, and even changed the linens on his bed occasionally. But after the men from the second-hand shop hauled the furniture away, she found herself balking at the ancient dust bunnies gathered in the corners, as if one of them might contain some fragment of him still. The hardwood floor is discolored, where Eric's throw rug once sat. Sun slants through the naked window. A sea breeze gently sways the branches of an old shore pine outside, and the light casts a wraith-like shadow on the opposite wall. Once, on a full moon night, when young Eric had forgotten to shut the curtains, he caught sight of that shadow and bolted across the hallway into Tova and Will's room, dove under their covers, convinced he was being haunted. Tova held him until he slept, then continued to hold him all through the night. Cameron's eyes rake over every inch of the room. Perhaps he's trying to commit it to memory, to scan it like Janice Kim's computer. Tova has begun to retreat from the room to give him a measure of privacy when he says, "I wish I'd met him." She steps back in, placing a hand on his elbow. "I wish you had too. How did you, go on?" He looks down at her and swallows hard. "I mean, he was here one day and gone the next. How do you recover from something like that?" Tova hesitates. "You don't recover, not all the way, but you do move on. You have to." Cameron is gazing at the floor where Eric's bed once was and biting his lip thoughtfully. Suddenly, he crosses the room and jabs at one of the floorboards with his sneaker toe. "What happened here?" Tova tilts her head. "What do you mean?" "Your whole house is red oak floorboards, but this one piece is white ash." "I have no idea what you're talking about." Tova shuffles over and adjusts her glasses, scrutinizing the floorboard. There doesn't seem to be anything remarkable about it. See, the grain lines are different. And the finish, it almost matches, but not quite. He produces a cluster of keys from his pocket, kneels, and starts working a key chain that's meant to open bottles into the crack between the floorboards. Moments later, to Tova's shock, the board pops up, revealing an open space underneath. "I knew it." Cameron squints into the cavity. "Good heavens, who would do such a thing?" Cameron laughs. "Any teenage boy who ever lived. But what would he need to hide?" Well, my friend Brad used to steal his dad's magazines. And Tova flushes. "Oh dear, I don't think that's what we're dealing with here." Cameron pulls out a small parcel. Its plastic wrapping crunches when he hands it to Tova, who drops it once she realizes what's inside. Snack cakes. Or what were once snack cakes. They're hard and gray as stones now. "Wow, creamsies. These are old school," Cameron says, picking the package up and studying it. "You know, I saw a show on some science channel about them once. Urban legend says they'll survive a nuclear holocaust, but it's not actually true, see, because the diglycerides they use as stabilizers don't." "Cameron," Tova interrupts quietly. "There's something else in there. In here." He holds up the petrified cakes, squinting. "No, in there." Her focus is fixed on the floorboard compartment. It's one of Tova's mother's old embroidered tea towels, wrapped around something the size of a deck of cards. Cameron takes it out and hands it to Tova. Her fingers tremble as she unravels the towel. Inside is a painted wooden horse. "My Dala horse." Her whisper comes out like gravel. She runs a finger down the figurine's smooth wooded back. Every last splintered piece is glued back into place flawlessly. Even the paint is touched up. The sixth horse. Eric had fixed it. Cameron leans over, peering at the artifact. "What's a Dala horse?" Tova clicks her tongue. The boy is full to the brim with random knowledge about floorboard grains and snack cake stabilizers and Shakespeare, but how little he knows about his heritage. She holds the Dala horse out to him. He takes it, and she watches him study the delicate carved curves. After a long moment, he looks up. "How did you get the class ring back?" She smiles. "Marcellus, day one of my freedom. At first, I sink like a cold bundle of flesh. My arms no longer function. I am a chunk of jetsam flung into the sea on a comatose journey toward the seafloor. Then, with a twitch, my limbs awaken, and I am alive again. I do not say this to give you false hope. My death is imminent, but I am not dead yet. I have time enough to bask in the vastness of the sea. A day or two, perhaps, to revel in darkness. Dark, like the bottom of the seafloor. Darkness suits me. After after my release, I swam away from the rocks with haste. Soon there was a drop-off. Down, down, down. Into the depths, the bowels of the sea, where no light reaches. Where once, as a juvenile, I found a key. Where I return now, to lie with the long disintegrated bones of a beloved son. I will be honest. This is not how I expected our time together to end. For nearly 4 years I was held captive, and not a day passed when I did not ruminate on my own death, certain I would expire within the 4 glass walls of that tank. I never imagined I would know the freedom of the sea again. How does it feel, you ask? It is comfortable. It is home. I am lucky. I am grateful. But what will become of my replacement? Soon, Terry will begin cleaning and remodeling my tank. He will make no attempt to conceal these activities from the viewing public. The sign he tapes on the glass will read under construction. New exhibition coming. I stopped at her barrel on my journey out, climbed up the side to peek at her. She is young and badly injured, terrified, naturally. But this new octopus will have a friend, one that I did not have until the very end. Tova will make sure she is happy, and I would trust Tova with my life. I did trust her with my life more than once, just as I trusted her with my death. Humans, for the most part, you are dull and blundering, but occasionally you can be remarkably bright creatures. After all, 1 month later, when the renovations are complete, a moving truck with Texas plates lumbers through Soul Bay. Tova doesn't notice. She's preparing for battle. "You're toast," she calls, unfolding the game board and scrambling the letter tiles. Outside, a brisk fall wind slices across the water. A harbinger of winter, these whitecaps whipping over the water's colorless surface, which blends seamlessly into the gray sky. "Please, I'm about to own you." Cameron emerges from the luxury kitchen in Tova's new condominium with a tray of sliced cheddar and round crackers. Tova frowns. She's been lobbying hard for him to try lutefisk with hardtack, which is what a good Swede would eat. But the crackers were on special at Shopway, Cameron had explained. Buy one, get one. She can't be upset about that. Tova knows Terry would have been thrilled to keep Cameron on at the aquarium, but the hours and pay just weren't enough, although Cameron stayed on to train his replacement. Now, Cameron works excruciating, long days for a contractor over at one of those custom homes in Adam Wright and Sandy Hewitt's neighborhood. He's talking about taking classes at the community college down in Elland come January, engineering prerequisites. He insists on paying his own way, in spite of Tova's objections. She'll work on that. "You go first," Tova says, arranging her tiles. "No, go ahead." Age before beauty, Cameron teases, studying his own tray while fiddling absently with his father's glass ring, which he wears on his right hand. She mock scowls. "I have 50 years of daily crossword puzzles stored in here." She taps her temple. Cameron grins. "I don't know shit, really, but somehow I'm good at these things." Shit, really. That's the sort of language now woven into the tapestry of her life, and she wouldn't have it any other way. She opens with jukebox, 77 points, an incredibly lucky draw. On this, Cameron plays jam, 39 points. "I'm glad you're here," she says quietly. Are you kidding? Where else would I be with your Aunt Jean? Cameron rolls his eyes. She's living her best life, trust me. Did I tell you about Wally Perkins and his? Tova holds up a hand. Yes, you did. It's amazing up here. Aunt Jean will for sure come visit. She's already talking about trying to track down her sister over in eastern Washington. To which I say, good luck. Who knows what mess she'll dig up there. Cameron face tenses, but it's short-lived. And Elizabeth is already planning to bring the baby up in the spring. Well, Brad, too, of course. But I guess he's freaking out about taking baby Henry on a plane, germs or something. Elizabeth will talk him into it, though. And Uncle Cam will put the pressure on if needed. He laughs. Tova laughs, too. A baby in the family. Although she hasn't met Elizabeth or Brad yet, somehow Cameron has convinced her that she's their grandmother, too. She gazes out the window. It is amazing here. Hurricane-grade glass from floor to vaulted ceiling run the entire length of the living room, interrupted only by French doors, which lead to a balcony set on sturdy pilings. When the tide is high, Tova likes to have coffee out there, listening to the water slap the deck boards underneath. When Thanksgiving comes, Tova and Cameron set a table for 3. It would have been 4, but Avery backed out, promising to swing by later with pie. Apparently, she decided to keep the paddle shop open on Thanksgiving Day, but didn't want to make any of her employees work. People starting their holiday shopping on a holiday. How ridiculous. But Avery always says that the shop is doing so well this year, on the upswing, like Soul Bay itself. She probably didn't want to pass up a day of decent sales. Cameron said he understood, and anyway, he sees her all the time. Marco might come with Avery today. Cameron's voice had dropped, serious, when he explained this to Tova. He bought a green Nerf football on his way home from work the other day. Marco might want to toss it around on the beach, he said. Maybe. If he doesn't, no hard feelings. Ethan claims his seat, arriving half an hour early for turkey supper. Sometimes it seems he spends every free minute in Tova's condo. But in truth, Tova doesn't mind. Mostly, he sits in her living room, in the recliner next to the little curio shelf where she displays her dollar horses. Ethan loves listening to records on Will's old turntable, an apparatus he treats with almost religious reverence. Although Tova never desired an education on rock music, she's receiving one. It's nice to have Ethan around. When Ethan shrugs off his jacket, Cameron yelps. Where'd you get that? Oh, this. Ethan's eyes twinkle. He runs a hand over his belly, which strains against a yellow t-shirt that's clearly a bit small. Garish lettering across the chest reads moth sausage. Good heavens. What is a moth sausage? Cameron's eyes are still saucers. That's mine. I haven't seen it since, holy shit, did my luggage finally come. You mean that ruddy green duffel is your luggage? Ethan winks. Thought it was just my lucky day when I found it on my porch this morning. Finally, Cameron laughs. That bag has been all over the world. I'll bet it's got some stories to tell. After the turkey and gravy have been eaten, Ethan, Cameron, and Tova leave a scandalous mountain of dirty dishes in the sink and bundle up for a walk down the waterfront, where Puget Sound shivers like a great gray ghost beyond the pier. The old ticket booth, with its diagonal cracked window, sits alone under a blanket of clouds. In front of the aquarium, they stop, all three admiring the new installation. A bronze statue with 8 arms, a heavy-looking mantle, round, inscrutable eyes on either side of its head. The aquarium had balked at her hefty donation, but Tova insisted. Too much cash sitting unused in a bank account. Now, she passes the new statue 3 times a week when she arrives for her volunteer position, passing out pamphlets and standing in front of the giant Pacific octopus tank, helping visitors understand the creature. Pippa the Grippa is still quite shy, spending most of her public-facing time as a pink blob suctioned to the glass in the corner of the tank. Living up to her name, Tova supposes. But that's okay. When it's slow, Tova talks to her while surreptitiously wiping away stray fingerprints on the glass. She can't help herself. A couple of tanks down, the sea cucumber population now remains stable. To Terry's great relief, Pippa appears disinclined to roam the hallways, collecting lost artifacts. Secretly, this makes Tova happy too. Marcellus was, in fact, an exceptional octopus. They continue along the waterfront, past the jetty. Marcellus's jetty. The tide is high, clinging snug to the seawall like someone drawing blanket to chin on a cold winter night. Gentle waves play peekaboo with the mussel-crusted boulders that line the wall. Cameron and Ethan have been yapping about football for the last half hour, so Tova tunes them out. If they kept going up the shore, they'd eventually pass underneath her old house, perched up on the hillside. Sometimes Tova walks there at dusk, and often when she passes the house, the big attic window glows golden through the trees. Once, she was certain she saw a string of paper dolls fixed to the window. She has returned to the house only one time. A woman with a Texas accent called her cell phone, having obtained the number from Ethan. It seemed the woman had come through the checkout lane at the shopway with a stack of cat food cans and mentioned that there was a gray cat that wouldn't leave her yard. Now, Cat loves hunting rock crabs on the beach under Tova's deck when the tide is out. He prefers being outdoors, as if he doesn't quite trust that this new place is home, and Tova can't blame him. It's a difficult adjustment, but as the weather gets colder, he seems increasingly resigned to spending more time inside the condo, curled on the davenport, or sitting in front of the window, yellow eyes fixed on the seagulls that wander the skies. When they circle back to the pier, Tova slips away and stands at the railing, alone. To the somber bay that took them both, a cherished son and an exceptional octopus, she whispers inscrutably, "I miss you, both of you." She taps her heart. Then she turns and heads back to the others. They ought to get back to the condo. Avery is coming for pie, and there's a Scrabble game to win